there is a God's intervention in everything that you do. The topic that is given to me, the equity and inclusion in philanthropy, centering marginalized voices for the lasting impact. A topic that was supposed to be dealt yesterday, and came today morning. Then I actually went to breakfast because I was the timetable at 11. So it also means the blending with the requirements of the time. So you need to run along with the time to make sure that you go where you need to be. So now I straight away go with the topic. The topic is very vast. Yesterday we have already dealt among SDGs, the global view about how the equity and inclusion should be part of philanthropy. I'm here to give the Indian perspective. Second slide, please. I'm going to cover the whole topic into the following segments. Understanding philanthropy in Indian context, paradigm shift in philanthropy, Gen Z, India in perspective, is culture of giving is at stake or declined, response to the centralizing the voices of the marginalized, India's approach to global changes, and the last SRG intervention. In fact, the presentation what I prepared yesterday was completely changed because there was a lot of overlapping of the topics. So last night, myself and Sham has sat down up to 1 o'clock and reworked the whole presentation because we don't want to present what is already being presented. So there's a reason even when I sent to Glenda, there's a completely whole different, the content is completely different. I give you the genesis of philanthropy in India. I don't know how many of you been to India. I know that Glenda is there for, been to India for a couple of times. I don't know how many of you been to India. Okay, I'm happy at least to see a number of hands risen. What is the uniqueness that you have seen in India when you traveled from north or south or west? Anyone in the audience? What is something that unique except Father? I think, what is uniqueness that you have seen in India? Someone from the audience? Pardon? Food. Okay. Anyway, now everyone have a different perspective. India is a very, very diverse country. As you said, food is one of the very main ingredients. But let me take you back to the origins of philanthropy in India. As it is shown in the slide, in India, the connection between the religion and giving is especially important, as almost all the religions have some component of philanthropy ingrained in them. Hindus consider dan or giving as one of the greatest virtues and providers of moksha, liberation. In Sikhism, Dasavant, that directs the one to donate 10% of their income in the form of seva, act of assistance or service. Indian Muslims adhere to the principles of zakat or sadaqah to help those in need. Christians in India mostly donate to the schools, hospitals, churches, along with the religious giving. The prominent families and business houses give back to the communities, recognizing their role in supporting social welfare. From the ages together, the religion plays a very, very important role in Indian cultures. A diverse country with diverse cultures and diverse religions, the aspect of giving is very much part of an Indian culture. Of course, over the ages, the methodology of giving has changed, but the basic ingredients remained in the ethos of Indian culture. Now, why I'm speaking about the philanthropy in India? Equity has to begin with giving. Equity cannot be part of a philanthropy if you don't start giving. It has to be inborn in a culture irrespective of your socio-economical status. It is not always the rich that gives, but every member of a society should have that inborn thirst to give back to the society, whichever the form it may be. It not be always in a monetary form. It may not be always in a material form. It could be any form that you are capable of giving back to the society is very much ingrained in the ethos of Indian culture. Now, the paradigm shift in philanthropy. Next slide. Historically, giving in India has mostly taken place informally and anonymously. And informal giving still remains in practice across the diverse cultures of India. However, advent of philanthropy and digital giving in India has shifted giving to be more conscious and structured. All forms of individual and retail giving, especially in the digital giving space, demonstrated potential for higher giving rates in future. There is a drastic change in the format of giving or helping in India. Ages back, when someone donates something, no one in the congregation, no one in the society knows who donates for whom. The concept is kept so secretly because it is for the noble cause. People always believe, as the gospel says, if you help with your right hand, let the left hand do not know what is. So it has been practiced very personally and very devotionally in India over the ages. But now, currently, with the digitalization, crowdfunding, the giving has an attachment of a branding. You need to be recognized, you need to be acknowledged, you need to be endorsed. The concept has gone to so much that every funder, every donor need to be recognized. So the ethos of giving is being changing in a cultural aspect of India. Is it good? Is it bad? It is moderate. Is subjected to the perspective of an individual and the perspective of the cause that you are giving for. Next slide, please. To develop a better understanding of these shifts, this study identified and examined the relationship between demographic factors and the drivers of online giving and the new and emerging giving methods in digital space in India. The philanthropic paradigm in India constitutes practices and traditions from the origins of early Indian society, while generational differences and shifts of today are shaping a giving behavior. We are talking about thought leadership. I'm emphasizing on giving behavior. How the current generation of donors or the givers, what is their attitude for the social enterprise? What is their concern for the humanity? What is their concern for the well-being of everyone in the society beyond the front eyes? India is the fast emerging country in the world in terms of economy, in terms of industry, in terms of digitalization. We are the country which is using maximum digital currency in Asia. A vegetable vendor uses UPI. Is that transition of giving to a digital currency, how far it is helping the people to become more concerned towards the well-being of society? The next slide, please. Here comes Gen Z. I don't know how many of you belong to Gen Z here in India. Sorry, in this group. Gen X. Anyone Gen Y? Indian millennials and Gen Z are the largest population groups in the entire world, which undoubtedly holds great significance for the both modern philanthropy and the digital age, even more so in India, where both the generations are driving the evolution of India's economic and a digital revolution. Hence, the research study was designed to understand the emerging trends in the Indian philanthropic space, with a special attention to the relationship between demographic factors and the drivers of online giving. Why I'm giving you the synopsis, the origin of the philanthropy in India to the Gen Z is equity means the giving. How the transition of giving that has been shaping the world and especially India is the point of concern that I would like to put forward to the audience here. Next slide, please. In an Indian perspective, faith-based organizations, India is multilinguistic, cultural and religious country. There are 9 religions that are born in India. The Catholic communities, the Christians and Catholic communities, we have 174 dioceses across India, north, south, west and east. Latin rites, we have 132 and 0 Malabar 31, 0 Malankara is 11. For those who don't know this, we have a different rites in India in the Catholic Church. We have religious congregation of men 231 and religious congregation of women we have 555 as of statistics from 2013. Now, why I said this, I will come back to the NGOs. In spite of so much of number of presence, the Christian presence in India is just 3.8 to 4%. The percentage of the Catholics and the Christian community over the 3 centuries is just 3.8 to 4%. But what have we done to bring in equity and inclusion in philanthropy by these communities is tremendous. If today the education, health, and the women empowerment is far more what it was, just hats off to the religious, the faith-based organizations that had brought in revolutionary changes pre-independence and post-independence of India. We have just completed 76 years of independence. The credible work that is being done by the religious is no one can deny. Today, the great leaders in India are schooled in our religious schools and colleges. Undoubtedly, they have been shaped by the religious values. But down the line, what is happening is how far have we educating them to be a philanthropist? Millions of students have passed through our education institutions, got the benefit of hospitals, got the benefit of being an empowerment centers. How far is the philanthropy, the concept have been deep down got into the minds and the hearts of people? For me, equity always is about giving. The moment you stop giving, there is no equity. Somewhere we have educated the people to be more prosperous, but somewhere the education of the heart, empowerment of the heart is somewhere that has to be seriously done so that people start giving more than what they receive. If the equity and the inclusion has to be part of a philanthropy, then the people need to be educated, not only just intellectually, but the education has to be happen through the formation of heart. If you don't believe in principles, it doesn't happen. And religious are in a wake of realizing this very aspect. How can we start empowering the people to become more philanthropists so that we can add more and more value to the society and the systems? You might be alarming to hear, next slide please. We have a population of 1.3 billion. The growing population, the country which are diverse cultures. We have, as per the statistics, we have a 3.3 million NGOs that are registered. There are 250,000 of NGOs that are not registered but doing an incredible job for 1.3 billion people. The contribution is remarkable, but a lot more to be done. We have 122 major languages which are recognized by the Government of India, and we have 1,599 dialects. Still needs the greater impactful inventions or interventions. Why I'm saying this, if you travel in India every 100 kilometers, you see a change of language, change of culture, change of food habits. Unifying India is not that easy demographically because the culture is so diverse. The terrain is diverse, the requirements of the people is so diverse. So you need to get into the depths of the human requirement in India. The religious and NGOs are doing incredible job, but still there are a lot more to be done in bringing this equity and inclusion in philanthropy in an Indian perspective. Today we are here to be part of SRG. Certainly we are looking forward how we can become a global family to embrace everyone with the same ethos and same principles that works for the human good. Beyond religion, beyond cultures. Equity and inclusion is never to differentiate anyone based on their credentials. Today, the countries are building up brands, building up names, forgetting the basic requirements of the human beings. The society needs to thrive back and bring back that we are a global family and we are meant to be together. We work together for the common good and for the welfare of every human being beyond any reservations. Now, my question is, the next slide, please. The culture of giving is seriously at stake or declined. If culture of giving is declined, how can we promote equity and inclusion be a philanthropy? You might say we have a lot of donors, we might have a lot of people who are ready to donate. But a very thoughtful question to all of us is the culture of giving is at stake or declined? Certainly, if people are there to receive, there is a lot more greed. People are become more avaricious, want to accumulate more and more wealth at the cost of human welfare. Can we bring back the culture of giving in a society? How do we bring? We may be a fast forwarding in a technology, digitalization, AI. But how do we teach people around in the world to give back? Giving is an essential part of every religion. It is not just for a community that you belong to, a country that you belong to, a nation that you are affiliated with. The new norm of inclusion is about migrants who are migrating from one country to other country for livelihood. We have millions of migrants in India who migrate from one state to other state for the livelihood. The refugees across the world. If these are the people that need to be included in a philanthropy, can we diversify the concept of giving for the good of humanity? The question is left to all of us, the eminent speakers and the members in the audience. How do we build this ecosystem that where everyone is empowered to give back to the society with a deep conviction and faith that we have been professing over the years? The next slide, please. We have been heard a lot about SDGs. How do we respond to the Sustainable Development Goals in the situation of centralizing the voices of the marginalized? If you look back, 2000 we had a Millennial Goal 7. This is given by UN. Now in 2015 we have a 17 goals. The goals are gradually increasing from 15 years down the lines. We have managed with the 7, now we have gone to 15. And certainly after 2030, the goals are going to be increased. But the basic requirement of elements, education, poverty, health remains the same. Why is that so much of an advancing? Still the basic goals remains unattended. Still today, there is no proper statistic data which says that any country has achieved either the Millennium Goals or what is the future prospectus of SDGs in every country. Because every country has got its certain areas of focus that need to be re-looked into. And certainly after 2030, the goals are going to be increased. So how are we going to elevate ourselves and to make sure that the basic and the fundamental SDGs are to be taken care to keep up that ecosystem that always helps us to grow together as a family. Next slide, please. For me, marginalized are the vulnerable section. The vulnerability of the humanity is to be heard, understood, and to respond. Identify the rising inequalities within and among the countries as an immense challenge and that must be confronted. Focuses on leaving no one behind. The SDG focus on by 2030, leaving no one behind. Not only entices reaching the poorest of the poor, but also seeks to combat discrimination and rising inequalities within and among the countries and their root causes. Here the marginalized are the ones who have not been heard, not been attended to, and they are not in the main spectrum of the society. Can we include them to make a difference? We are in a world statistics driven. We are in a world the data is something that gives a success. But there are a lot more things that have not come into the data where you and I need to take part to make a difference. Can we make a difference where the no entity, no organization, no government can reach out to? For me, hearing or centralizing the voices of the marginalized is those people who are out of spectrum, who are out of data, who are not counted in the mainstream of society. I'll give a very short, the next slide please. The India's approach to global challenges. In 2020-21, India has pledged, India is one of the largest country in the world which has produced a vaccine for the COVID-19. And it has pledged with the 5S, which is going to transform the India's bilateral relationship with other countries. That is first, Samman, that is a word Hindi, which means respect. Samvad means dialogue. Sayog means cooperation. Shanti means peace. And Samruddhi means prosperity. These are the 5 important elements that India is taking a pledge to propagate, to make sure that it becomes the contributors of growth and development of humanity across the world. It has been practicing and it is going to practice because it is being pledged in the government of India 2020 to make sure that India makes a remarkable contributions to the world. Coming back, next slide. In SDGs, the last 17th goal is about partnerships. If you want to drive the 17 SDGs, you need to go reverse process to make sure that these 17 goals are achieved. Why the 17 is partnership? Because if we want to achieve very significantly all these SDGs, you need to start with the partnership and collaborations. That's why UN, we are here to create that impactful collaboration and network with all NGOs, organizers, donors, people of goodwill. Only this can make a change, otherwise it cannot work. Involving those strongly identify the cause is one of the key for lasting success. The last one, my time is up, so thank you. I'll just conclude with the 2. Next slide, please. Now, the SRG intervention. We are very glad Dr. Glenda has visited India 3 times, had meeting with the couple of religious organizations, NGOs, met people, got the glimpse of what India is all about. Now, what we are looking at SRG at this point of time is the presence of SRG in India will play a very vital role. Unification of congregations. As of now, we are all working in silos with our charisms, with our missions. Certainly the intervention of SRG is certainly going to unify us together and work for the common goal. Add a value addition to all the faith-based organizations. Capacity building. Introduce sustainable methodologies in mission through pillars of capacitation model of SRG. Reach to the unreachable, bring a global ecosystem, transformative, synergetic networking, and build a just society, just world by centralizing the voices of marginalized. This is where we are very strongly looking forward to have a great connect with SRG and all of you who are here. Let's create an ecosystem that will have a lasting impact in the humanity and the people of India. The last slide, the conclusion. This is my famous, the person whom I admire, the Nelson Mandela. He's the man who said, let's build a rainbow nation. A man who worked for the freedom of Africa. When the freedom was achieved, the people of Africa said, let us drive away the Britishers. They have been subjugated for a number of years to us. Why should we have them in our country? The man stood and said, no, we are not traitors, neither they are. Let us forgive them and accept them. Let us build an inclusive country. He has coined the word a rainbow nation, where though he was being discriminated, he said, I don't want to redo that. I want to heal the process of discrimination. I want to bring that unity beyond cultures and beyond religions. The famous quote he says, as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequity persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. I think we are the people here who filled with a passion and commitment to do something for the people who need our help, who needs our support. We are blessed, so let us bless others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Prem, for the very interesting and challenging talk. I'm sure some of you would have questions to ask him during the panel discussion. On to our next presenter. With a 17 year of international career, our next speaker has worked with two United Nations agencies, namely the UNHCR, or the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and the UNICEF, or the United Nations Children's Fund, in various roles across different countries and contexts. His extensive experience expands roles at the headquarter, regional, country operation, and national partner levels. He is currently serving as the Senior Private Sector Partnerships Officer for Asia and the Pacific within UNHCR, where he oversees relationships with corporate entities, foundations, and high net worth individuals in the region. And this morning, to talk to us about the landscape on faith-based philanthropy and capacity building value, please help me welcome Mr. Federico Simcic.
Good morning. Let me start by thanking Spring Rain Global for the invite, and especially Dr. Glenda. So thank you for inviting UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, to this important event, and thank you for having me on stage. Well, for the timekeeper, I'm Italian, I speak a lot, so, and actually there can be a call for all of you. You can just let me the sign when I'm talking too much. And for moving the slides, I will try maybe with a pointer. Okay, it's actually working. Perfect. Let me go back a second. And when I was approached for this conversation, I thought, okay, I can talk about faith-based giving, but then I realized, do the people know what we do, who we are, why the connection between a UN agency and faith-based giving organizations? So I decided to switch a bit, or to change a bit my presentation, and I think that the common denominator that I found is the shared humanity, and how faith-based organization can work together with UNHCR to help those forced to flee. So let's talk about the topic. Okay, it's not working anymore. So next, please. I will do the sign when I want to move, okay? So next slide. The topic, why we're talking about this. 117 million people forced to flee because of war and persecution. It's a staggering number. Actually, is more than the whole population of the Philippines, since we have many people from the Philippines here. I want to break a myth here, especially a populist myth, that refugees always flee to rich countries. It's not true. 9 out of them, as you can see, actually they flee in middle or low income countries. The war is in a turmoil. The number of emergency keeps growing. You can see the effect of the pandemic, of the COVID-19 pandemic that started in 2019, 2020. Then the war in Ukraine in 2022, with many other conflicts starting and triggering everywhere. And this is the number of emergencies that UNHCR has been supporting and answering to in the last few years. So it's a divided war. Is a war that is a conflict. And our cause and what we do, it keeps getting more and more important. beyond these numbers, there are human beings, there are individuals like all of us. Allow me to bring some of those stories to you. Ukraine. This is a kindergarten in Odessa that was bombed a year ago. The conflict in Ukraine has displaced over 3 million people inside the country, over 6 million outside of the country, and right now 40% of the whole population in Ukraine needs humanitarian assistance. According to the estimates of the government of Ukraine, the United Nations, and the World Bank, the cost of rebuilding the country after the war is over $400 billion. Next. But I also want to talk about the Sudan crisis, because no one is talking about it. And the number of people forced to flee because of the internal conflict is the same one as in Ukraine, 9 million people. But the media are not talking about it. No one is paying attention to it. And right now, our operation in Sudan is only 8% funded. The world is just not looking at it. Beyond that, I wanted to bring the example of Afghanistan, not the usual one. Is actually climate related, because Afghanistan is one of the countries most exposed to climate change. Actually, 33 out of the 34 provinces in Afghanistan have been affected by natural disasters over the last years, earthquakes, floods, and right now, according to the UN estimates, since the beginning of the year, over 145,000 people have been affected by natural disasters. Or in the case of the floods in Africa, this picture was taken in Burundi, actually in Bujumbura, where 35,000 refugees have been affected by the recent floods and heavy rains. Before I move to the next chapter, and a quote by the UN Secretary General, no matter the outcome, this war will have no winners. And allow me to add, war do not have winners or losers, they only have victims. And war does not only affect people, but also heritage, culture, and societies. Our High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, paid a visit to the Odessa Cathedral this January to pay homage, because this cathedral was heavily damaged by a missile in July 2023. What we do as UNHCR, very quickly, because I want to talk about faith-based giving, but you might not know us, and you might still ask yourself why you're here, and what is the connection with what we do. Well, we have a presence for over 70 years, 140 countries, 20,000 people, helping the forcibly displaced. Global presence. Next. This is what we do. We help anyone who is forced to flee their country in everything. Life-saving assistance. The moment you cross the border with nothing on you, but just some money, not even some clothes, nothing. We provide all the core relief items that you might need, from shelter, from a blanket, from a kitchen, from a kitchen set, from food and protection. And then, because this crisis become protracted, we start looking at the other needs: education, protection, livelihood, work. So there is a whole trajectory of empowering refugees and bringing back on their feet, so they can get back their lives. I always say there is nothing worse than being labeled as a refugee, because the moment you have that on your forehead, people forget that they used to be a doctor, a mother, a father, a friend. You are a refugee. You're labeled like that. But there are human beings behind that, like you and me. We can all be refugees. Actually, I'm third generation refugee. We do everything. Example of Bangladesh, 1 million people forced to flee from Myanmar. The people need everything in those 33 camps. So we provide water, sanitation, protection, food, education, energy, energy for cooking, for example. Of course, we work in as a UN agencies. Everything we do is aligned with the SDGs, but also for those of you who are coming from the private sector, we also align our indicator, our needs base, and our programming to the ESG. So we can align also with the environment, society, and governance objective of companies and organizations. So let's go to the topic. Why I'm here talking to you. I feel very humbled in front of such a diverse and interesting community of people sharing a common goal today, actually. So I want to start with actually a verse that I think is very appropriate for today, and then make the connection between what UNHCR does, the UN Refugee Agency, and faith-based organization. So, for I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. For I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. For I was a stranger, you invited me in. So, I think this is beautiful, and the beauty of this verse is actually that you invited me in. It's not you let me in. It's not, okay, you have a war, of course you have to flee your country. You can come, but when it's over you can go. No, you're invited. Please come. I understand what's happening. Come, we're gonna help. Our agency is only 1% funded by the UN, so the rest of the money is actually it comes from voluntary contributions, from people, faith-based organization, other governments and the private sector. We cannot do that alone, and actually UNHCR has always been working with faith-based organization for decades, because we acknowledge the power that all of you have in bringing peace, solidarity, compassion, changing hearts. Next. And I think that this picture tells a lot. This picture is beautiful. It was taken in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it shows the way we work with faith-based organization. A nun welcoming refugees and making sure that they are cured if they are sick, and looking after the education of children. An imam, a Muslim, helping actually welcoming refugees at their home, and promoting peace, promoting conflict resolution. This is what we do together. Next. That's why in 2021 UNHCR created a multi-religious council the multi-religious council of leaders. Over 20 religious leaders that combine their efforts together to promote peace, solidarity, compassion in the conflict and in the situation of forced displacement and conflict resolution. They meet regularly. Just last December at the Global Refugee Forum, they came together. I was blessed and honored to be there when they announced a joint pledge, but all the different religions together to talk and to address the refugee topic. Next. Since we're in Thailand, I thought it was a good way to talk the way that we work together with Buddhist organizations. So in the picture you can see Mediva Jiradom. Sorry, it's a very complicated name, but is the author of over 200 books, and he has been working for us for decades now. He was one of the first patrons appointed by UNHCR for peace and compassion, and actually he gathered in a major Buddhist international event over 200 monks from all different countries to sit together and to decide and to work together on how to address the topic of people forced to flee. In the 2021 emergency in Afghanistan and Pakistan, he wrote a poem that was published on several newspapers, and he also mobilized all this network of people to collect resources that support UNHCR work. But we also work with other organizations, Soka Gakkai, Risho Kozeikai, Buddhist organization that have been working with us for over 40 years. But also the Japan Buddhist federation, sorry, that they open up the doors of all the temples that they have in Japan to support what UNHCR does and to promote compassion and solidarity. For the Muslim community, if there is anyone here, this is actually a very important component for us. I told you about the 117 million people forced to flee. Half of them are Muslim. So a decade ago, our colleagues or my colleagues in the MENA region actually identified that 4 of the 8 categories eligible to receive zakat are perfectly aligned with the refugee topic: the poor, the needs, the in-debt, and the fair workers. So we created a refugee zakat fund. We did all the proper job talking to imams, to scholars. We get 15 fatwas that acknowledge what we do. We signed over 40 partnerships with religious and Muslim organizations. And we created a zakat compliant, sadaqah compliant fund that since 2017, when we launched it for the first time, it helped over 28 million people, I think. 8 million people in 28 countries. So a staggering number. Next. These are an example coming actually from the US, from the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints. They've been working together with us for over 30 years. They just announced recently a new partnership to support 85,000 refugees in 3 different countries. And here I have a beautiful quote about the president of humanitarian relief from the Latter-day Saints that says, "When you bless a woman, you bless a family. When you bless a child, you bless the future, and you bless the future generations." And that's why Latter-day Saints have been supporting us, especially on those 2 topics, supporting women and supporting children. Next. Last but not least, actually, because last will be first, our relationship with the Catholic Church and the Holy See. We have an ongoing relationship, of course, with the Vatican State, and our High Commission actually is a devout Catholic and paid an official visit to the Pope just October last year. Pope Francis is a special one. He has always been promoting peace and solidarity. He has always been pleading for the cause of the forcibly displaced, and that's why we're a strong ally. And we talk always together about how to give compassion, how to support people and refugees and people forced to flee. Next. Sorry. Next. And I conclude with a quote by a rabbi. We need to say humanity first. The job of religious leaders is to act together. We must act collectively to change one heart at a time. And maybe we're going to have some if you have questions, actually, I want to trigger more your curiosity, so you can ask me questions about how we can do that together. But we can leave that for the panel conversation later, or for the Q&A. But what I want to say that we don't have all the answers at UNHCR. We, by definition, our success is by working together, is by bringing together people from different beliefs, from different religions, from different governments. We are apolitical, we are irreligious, because we need to put people first, no matter who they are, no matter the religions they are, because we need to be granted the permission to operate in every country, no matter who is in power, no matter what the politics are behind it. Together, and maybe this is a call to action, and you can help us a lot to promote compassion, our shared humanity. What we are saying, welcoming people in, presenting the strangers as human beings like us. We have been seeing, and I'm talking specific about this region because we're in Asia, we've been seeing a lot of xenophobia, a lot of example where instead of opening our arms to welcome refugees, we've been saying, we don't want them. You're not allowed to come. You're going to be a risk for our community. That's something that you can change. That's something that you can help us changing. The other one, of course, is to mobilize resources and willings and communities on these efforts. And the last one is to advocate for refugees inclusion, because they're human beings like all of us, and it can happen to any of us. Thank you, and I look forward to receive any question during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simcic. Just have your questions ready for him during our discussion, our panel discussion later on. On to our next speaker. He's a management systems auditor, trainer, and consultant to some of the biggest private and public sector organizations in the Philippines and abroad for over a decade. He's a certified lead auditor for ISO-based management systems granted by the British Standard Institute, UK. He's the founder and CEO of AGF Counseling Group, an international management system standards think tank with client presence in different countries like Singapore, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Brazil, USA, and the Netherlands. He's also the president and founder of startup company Origin Energy Corporation, engaged in renewable energy development. And this morning, he will talk about enhancing capacities towards excellence in systems thinking in philanthropy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Angel Fernandez Jr.
Protocol observed. Good morning, everybody. Okay, wow. Let me start by saying that I also used to be in the seminary. So I joined the I joined the Oblates of Mary Immaculate back in 1990, and I spent 3 years in the seminary, and I think God has a different plan, obviously. So now I'm married with 2 children, and I'm into entrepreneurship from the corporate world, doing business for the last about 21 years. And so today I'm going to talk about systems thinking. I'm coming from the background of compliance and certification. And but first of all, let's define what is systems thinking, by the way. So, and how do we use this for philanthropy? I think you can just please click. So systems thinking is an integrative way, so to view large and complex issues as part of a group of systems. So it's composed of different elements that function together as a whole. Okay, quite a very straightforward definition. So let's look at the example. For example, this hotel is a system. So there's a system of receiving guests. There's a system on housekeeping, a system on how they serve food. Up to the time that we leave, the hotel has satisfied the clients. If we look at the human body, it's also a system. It's composed of different elements. So we have the DNA, the tissue, the muscles, the different organs working together. And think about it. If you disrupt one of these elements, you would basically disrupt the human body. You cannot say, oh, forget about it. It's just a toothache. It will not affect. I can still stand up and talk. One small element within a group of system would definitely affect the whole. and bring this to philanthropy. But before we go there, what about economy? An economy is also a system. It's composed of policies, governance, behavior, external forces, demands, supply. All these are elements composing that system. And there are also systems that can exist within a system. For example, in Bangkok, it's one dynamic, vibrant city. It's one huge system. But it's also composed of different systems within. You have local government units, municipalities, the tourism office, and so on and so forth. So the key takeaway here is that systems are everywhere and they exist at various scales. If you bring this to philanthropy, it makes you think about what are these different elements that we can analyze so that the way we do philanthropy is systemic. It's not like linear thinking that we all tend to do. Yeah, next slide, please. And let's define it further. I did mention linear thinking. This is our tendency, basically. So linear thinking, unlike system thinking, has inputs and outputs. So it asks the question, where does it start? And where will it end? For example, you're drinking that bottle of water today. If you're thinking systematic, in a linear way, you'd ask, where did that come from? And you'd probably, well, it came from F&B, and it's screened by the food safety assurance auditor, and it was provided by a vendor, it came from a factory, and so on and so forth. So it has a start, and it ends somewhere, and that's basically on your table. On the other hand, if we look at circular thinking, yeah, next slide, please. So circular thinking, but before that, this is one very good tool for systemic thinking, the iceberg, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. So we always look at events. So you catch a cold, but then you ask, why did we catch cold? Because we slept late, right? And why are you sleeping less these days? Because we have a lot of work to do. And so why do you stress over so much work? Because I'm so career focused. I have goals as far as career is concerned. And so this is one way to think about things. No, it's linear. It starts somewhere, it ends somewhere, it is caused by something, and then you have an effect. So for example, you ask, why do we have few funders? Or why is our community development projects not as successful as we thought it should be? What's causing that? And what you normally see are just basically events. There are so many underlying factors that you may probably miss. Maybe the competence of your staff, maybe the buy-in of stakeholders, maybe you lack engagement among different interested parties in your advocacy, for example. Yeah, next slide, please. So that's linear thinking. Now, if we look at circular thinking, this one is quite different. So circular thinking, while linear thinking has inputs and outputs, circular thinking can basically have the same input and output, right? So it's basically the same, and there is no specified end. Yeah, next slide. And there is a continuous feedback among each element. So, for example, case in point, you have, let's say, can you go back to this? Okay, that one. So, for example, a pizza delivery chain, they operate as a business, they want to increase profits, and so they make sure that they have sales, so the volume increases. And so when that happens, the more they get sales, it increases profits, but then again, it would also create excessive delivery times, right? And that would require a lot of logistical requirements, and then they will invest into new pizza infrastructure. This could cause delay because the owners would hesitate to invest, and that would affect the quality of pizza, would affect the sales volume, and probably it would also affect their process. It has no end, no? Meaning you see there that the outputs basically are also the inputs of another loop. And when we bring that into philanthropy, I think it's the same thing. No, we can basically apply the same concept. I was paying attention to yesterday's discussion, and I think Dr. Glenda mentioned that systemic issues should also be addressed in a systemic manner. there's a saying that you cannot expect to see different results if you keep on doing the same old things. That's stupidity, right? I mean, you have to approach it in a totally different way. Yeah, next slide, please. And so systems dynamics also is important here. How are the elements interacting? So if you look at your philanthropy, what are the different elements there? Father JP, right, presented a very good case study yesterday. And there's so many elements within that parish, within that hospital. And so the first thing we need to do here is to basically try to understand and identify all those elements. Who the stakeholders are, who are the interested parties, patients, students, volunteers, interns, funders, regulators, and what do they need and expect from us? If we do not understand those, we could not create a system for that, right? And then finally, what desired output do we want out of our system? What is the goal of the system? That's why I also asked this question. I had this opportunity to sit down in breakfast with one of you, and I asked them, so what really is the desired goal? If you only have one very important metric, what would that be? And the answer I think I got is amount of fund raised, right? Am I correct? Amount of fund raised. And I think that's right, no? Because earlier during the mass, I think that was also one of the message, like we are all solicitors, and I think we measure our success through the amount that we have solicited. So is that the desired output, or is that the only desired output among many other outputs? We also need to be very clear, right? Because yes, you can have the fund, but then the project will fail because the competency of the project team working on the project is also not included as part of our output. So in other words, there could be also outputs here or metrics that we need to consider. Yeah, next slide, please. And so there is International Organization for Standardization. And this is my world. How many of you here are certified to ISO, by the way? Except for Dr. Philip Tan, whom I've worked with and he's been implementing ISO for the last 25 years. No, so ISO, the business model of ISO is really anchored deeply into systems thinking. And there's so many ISO standards developed by ISO. And ISO basically is a non-governmental organization like most of us here. And so their mandate is to develop, to research, and to publish voluntary standards. It's composed of approximately 168 countries. Thailand is pretty much into standardization. The Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, of course, and the US and Europe. So this hotel is basically certified to standard. They're also certified to ISO 9001. They have ISO standards for food safety and all that. No? But next slide, please. And like I said, ISO develops all these different standards. And why am I showing these initial standards to you? For example, I think most of you are operating schools. Did you know that there's a specific standard for schools? And that is the, can we go back to that, please? Sorry. There's ISO 21001, which is basically your standard for systems thinking for school. Yeah, next slide. This one, yeah, okay, just, and this is the ISO standard for schools. This one, just pause right there. This is Educational Organization Management System. So, meaning to say, ISO standardization works this way. So it goes through, it's systems thinking, but it's certified. It goes through 3 layers of certification. So we have what we call first-party audit, second-party audit, and third-party audit. I'm a third-party auditor. We audit different systems. I also do second-party audit. So, next slide, please. So what we do here is that looking at the standards developed by ISO, which is basically linked to the SDG goals, right? This frameworks is basically aligned to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. It all started with these basic questions. What's the best way of doing this? And they provided this framework through international standards that we can all adopt. So when you implement this, you can go through certification audits, and you can maintain that standards, of course, by making sure that you achieve those desired results. So folks ask me and say, why do we really need to be certified? You know, the concept of certification is like this. When you say that you are beautiful, that's the kind of, okay, maybe But if someone else says you're beautiful, that's a different thing, right? So in a way, that's how I-certification works. A third person goes there and say, hey, you have very good processes. You have policies, structures, control, and all that. No? So, yeah, next slide, please. Okay. Now, we did mention earlier that systems thinking is composed of different elements. No, so specifically, let's say for educational organization management system, or even just for our philanthropy, it is also governed by different elements. And so I cannot, for the interest of time, dive into these elements. So from clause 4 to clause 10. So clause 4 is context of the organization. I think one of you yesterday was talking about strategy. And context of the organization is really all about strategy. It's about understanding where are you good at, where do you need to improve, what are threats, what are opportunities out there. And so you basically start from that. So your PDOs, for example, need to go back to that SWOT analysis, which you would probably find boring, but it's something that you really need to seriously consider because that defines basically your context. And that is just one of the elements in the systems thinking approach. Another element, of course, is leadership. So I'm not going to dive deeper into that, but when you implement all this, yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? When you dive into all of this, you implement this in a plan, do, check, act manner. So this is the circular thinking, systems thinking. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so can we just, so you plan, you implement, you evaluate, and basically you improve and go back to the plan again. It has no end, like we said in systems thinking earlier. And ISO, can we click on the next slide, please? Provided all of these elements within the circular thinking, which we can all use as a guide. So the idea here is that when we conform to this globally accepted standard, we are basically leaving systems thinking. It becomes a way of life for you, regardless of whatever your desired goals are, increasing funds, increasing the effectiveness of your programs through this systems thinking approach. And you see there, clause 4, that's basically the SWOT. And if you're running a school, you start with who your learners are, what are their needs, expectations, and requirements, what basically is needed in your community. And so you develop the system out of that. No? So, yeah, next slide. No, can you just click on the button, please? Okay, so, and then, of course, you're going to use different processes. Yep, next. And then just stop right there, okay? You're going to identify all these processes within that system. So, in a nutshell, are you still with me? Okay, so, I usually talk about this for 5 days straight. Now I'm going to compress everything in 15 minutes. and so you have to look at your PDO, right? Your philanthropic development office structure. Look at all the elements. Start from the SWOT analysis. Go to who are your interested parties, both internally and externally. What are their needs, expectations, and requirements? And what are the processes you need to put in place? Okay, so like I said, this hotel has a lot of different processes. You just don't know it. We're sitting here comfortably, but there's millions of processes behind this hotel running as one cohesive system. And that's also how we run the philanthropy. No, the hotel has very clear outcome, and that's about guests satisfied with the experience. And that's also the same manner when we run philanthropy. Start with that end in mind, right? And so you then identify all of this process, go through the systems thinking of planning, implementing, evaluating it, and improving it. And when you do that, in the world of ISO, you can actually close your eyes and predict that that's going to happen. The results of the systems thinking basically is exactly that. We have a process formula called R plus R equals C, where C stands for consistency. And that's what we all desire in philanthropy. Consistent funding, consistent impact, consistent accountability. And how do we achieve that? By putting systems in place. And to simplify that, putting processes in place. Pretty much like the human body with so many elements that works as a process, right? So what's your most important process in philanthropy, by the way? I would guess the answer is, again, solicitation, fundraising, right? And so the question here is that, have we established that process? Have we improved that process? Have we reviewed that process? You could no longer rely on linear thinking. You have to do circular thinking. And so going back to that process formula of R plus R equals C, no? That's a process formula. C stands for consistency. The first R stands for repeatability. Once you've established that fundraising process, you can just repeat that. If a new staff joins the organization, you just ask them, do not reinvent the wheel. This process is working, just do it. The other R is reproducibility. If you start growing, you're now 10 to 20, make sure that that standard is consistently implemented. In the world of systems thinking, the enemy of quality is variation. Okay, the enemy of variation is the enemy of quality. And so we wanted to have consistency. So that's why, you know, we adhere to that simple formula of R plus R equals C so we can predict results. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so in a nutshell, we can split this into 3 parts. So the first thing you need to do is to, yeah, next slide, please. The next thing to do is, just stay right there, okay, is to identify the inputs on the left. No? So what basically are your inputs? So for philanthropy, what are your most important inputs? Okay, the non-negotiables. Is it a policy? Is it a structure? Are these rules and responsibilities? Are these gap assessments? And what would be the desired result? By when? Okay, when do we want to achieve that? And the only way for us to really cross the gap or bridge the gap between inputs and outputs are the systems in between. And so from top management, middle management, operations, everybody thinks in a systems way. Looking at the PDCA approach. Like I said, there is no end. No, so next time around, you'd probably ask, maybe we need not really focus on this advocacy because we're not good at it. Or maybe we should focus on that. And you could not effectively attain that kind of level of thinking if you don't do systems thinking. All right? Linear thinking is like this. Okay, where is B coming from? Oh, it's from A. So where is C coming from? From B. And where is D coming from? From C. That's linear thinking. And there's a pitfall to that. You may probably miss other items in the ecosystem, for example. So, yeah, next slide, please. So, again, in standardization, regardless of whatever the standard is, so this one is ISO 26. This is a social accountability standard. Just kindly click on the button continuously. Yeah. So this is. So you look at the inputs on the left, and then the output on the right. You look at the different, these are all different elements of a system, as you can see, that works well together. No, so the challenge really here is that you need to constantly be thinking about all of these elements. And just go to the next slide, thank you. You need to constantly think of these different elements working together, right? Working within one another. No, so what I like about yesterday's presentation is that you all did mention about the importance of working closely with different stakeholders, and that's fantastic. I think that's key. So because before you do anything else, you also need to understand who your interested parties or stakeholders are. They can be external or internal. And one of the problems here is that organizations really focus externally only, and they tend to forget internal stakeholders as well. So we tend to forget we also have team working within us who will deliver value to the projects. And so, and when you miss on that, you'd probably have issues in competence, you'd probably have problems in hiring and all that. So the challenge here again is really looking at the entire structure. And people behave based on structure. So if you don't put structure there, people will also not behave accordingly. So when you put structure, you put system, people will just follow, right? Edwards Deming, the renowned American quality guru, he said that when there are non-conformances, we call it non-conformance. When there are non-conformances, the cause basically 80% of the time is system. But what organizations do is that they point their fingers to people. Why is that? Because it's the easiest thing to do. The people are the most visible ones. Maybe we didn't really exert effort, or maybe the approach is wrong and all of that. Maybe they did not appreciate. No? So, but when you look at it, 80% of these non-conformances, of these issues, of these problems are brought about by the system. And so what do? You don't just coach the people, the person, but go back and really dig deep into your system. What is it all about? did it really consider all of these elements? And systems in ISO are also governed by principles, which you can see on your screen. So this one is on social accountability. So you're not new to this, right? So meaning when you design your system, you consider all of these elements. Next slide, please. And so going back to school, it also has different elements like focus on learners, what do they really want. We've been working with quite a good number of universities and colleges in the Philippines, so because they're required by the Commission on Higher Education to be certified to ISO 21001 from state universities, the private higher educational institutions, colleges, and because the regulators would really want them to implement systems thinking. To, of course, make a dent as far as improving quality of education in my country. And so we look at these principles. Yeah, can you continue, please? And we basically identify what elements can we take into consideration. Engagement of people, process approach, look at that. ISO is really all about the process. When you're certified, what's certified basically is the process. And improvement, evidence-based decision-making. Next slide, please. And of course, social responsibility and ethical conduct. So these are the bedrock foundations, so to speak, when we start analyzing how the school operates. No? Next slide, please. And data security and protection, because a learning organization or institution would basically capture a lot of data and information proprietary to the students, learners, faculty, staff, and all that. Yeah, next slide, please. And so, very quickly, these are the requirements, or these are the elements within the system. Next slide, please. And so, let me just dwell. I have about, I think, 3 minutes left. So, this is where you can begin. No? So, John, what do we do now? Where do we start? This is where you begin. So, like I said, there are so many elements within one ISO standard, and this ISO standard is certifiable. So like I said earlier, it's kind of not really convincing if you tell people that, hey, I'm handsome or I'm beautiful, until someone else says that, hey, you're beautiful, right? That's the same approach. So, but how do you get that kind of feedback? By making sure that all of these elements are in place, and it's audited, and it's certified. So there's a third-party objective person goes to your organization and says, oh, wow, you have very good processes. It's conforming to these elements. So this is where you begin. Start looking at your 4.1. What is organization in this context? Well, like I said, to simplify this, look at where you're good at, okay? What are areas that needs improvement? Externally, what are opportunities out there? Externally, what are threats to your philanthropic initiatives? And then go to 4.2. Who really are our customers here? You know, from the corporate world, we always talk about clients, customers. In our case, it may not be probably customers. It would be the community. Those who are in need of services that we could provide, those who own the problems that we can solve, those are your interested parties. They could probably be the industry, the government, the marginalized, those with no access to water, education, healthcare. Those are your interested parties. And define clearly what do they need, okay? No rocket science. And then 4.3, define your scope. Sometimes you try to attempt too many things. What really is your signature advocacy? Can you stick within that and you can stay within your alley? That's basically scope. And finally, in 4.4, these are your processes. Okay? So start coming up with an inventory of what do we need to have? What processes do we need to establish? So that even if we are sleeping and in Bangkok attending a conference, the office will run by itself. It is a leverage. When you have an established process, you can think of something else more productive to do and let the process run itself. Again, R plus R equals C. And my time is up, so let me just show you all of this. No? So diving deeper into this context, yep, identify external, internal issues. Next slide, please. So you start with a simple SWOT analysis, because all the elements would come from here. So make sure that you dive deep into this. No? So, and then, like I said, what's the desired goal? So agree on metrics. Is it amount of fund raised, impact achieved, communities transformed, life change, and all that? My respects to past district governor Philip Tan and past district Governor Mildred Bitangcol. We come from the Rotary family, and of course, I'm invited here by Dr. Glenda, who is also a Rotarian. I'll be leading Rotary District in the Philippines next year, and we start also with metrics. So it's the same thing. Next slide, please. And so there you go. So these are just examples. Now begin with the end in mind. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So this, okay, who would be your interested parties? Next slide. Yeah, just continue working. What's your scope? Yeah, just keep on clicking. Okay, and then these are different elements. Make sure there's policies, org structure. Yeah, next slide, please. And there it is. Now, 6.2, what would be your objectives, including risk? No? In ISO, we tell everyone to be paranoid. Okay? So you'd probably be, we trust in God. Yes, we also do that. No? In God we trust, but in everything else, show me the data. So there's even a book written by Andy Grove, former CEO of Intel. The title of the book is Only the Paranoid Survive. No? There are only two things in business, sales and everything else, right? So we make sure that everything or anything or all elements that could compromise results, we take that into consideration, we put in the risk registry. The same is true with the philanthropy. What can go wrong? You ask that question, okay? And then try to put controls there, whether it's financial, information security, or we're having poor enrollment. Is it bound to happen? We're having migration of faculty to state universities because pay is better there. All of these are risk. Okay, and then of course you document it. The next slide, please. Okay, and a lot of criteria on how you define the process. No, so I don't have time, unfortunately. And of course, make sure you have to audit it. Okay, so there's performance evaluation. In your philanthropy, think of 4 things when you evaluate it. Number 1 is monitor the key performance result. Agree on only one. What is it? Okay, I'm sure we're going to fight over that one most important KPI. But do that. Monitor it. Second is measure it. Actual versus target. Third is analyze it. Why is there a variance? Remember, variation is the enemy of consistency. And finally, evaluate it. You can only do that if you do internal audits. In ISO, the 3 systems audit work. Your first-party audit, a second-party audit, and a third-party audit. Then you're certified. Then you can say that, hey, I'm world-class. And lastly, is continual improvement. So just like the systems loop, it has no end. So once you have completed performance evaluation, it will go back to the plan again. Okay? And before you know it, you're transforming lives, you're building organizations, you're helping communities in a more robust, systemic way. Okay? And lastly, let me, okay, so this is again the system. Let's just leave that. The next slide, please. So this is the framework. This is a 30,000 feet overview of how ISO works in 15 minutes, okay? And let me leave you with this. No? So if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez, for freshening up our memory about ISO processes and certification. On to our next speaker. He's a member of the Claretian Fathers, the Missionary Sons of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, or better known as CMF. In fact, he's the General Mission Procurator of the Claretians, and therefore is based in their general house, their Curia in Rome, Italy. He has been working, of course, with the CMF in different capacities. He's been the project director, for example, of the Claretian Educational and Social Service Society in Chennai, India, for 7 years. Project director of the Claretian Society in Kolkata, India, for 8 years. General Mission Procurator of the Claretian Congregations in Rome, Italy, for 5 years. His areas of specialization include project management, fundraising, organizational development. And this morning, to talk to us about the landscape of funding in Asia and beyond, grants and faith-based donors, let us welcome Father Lord Wheeler, CMF.
So good morning, everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Glenda, the SRG family, and it's very good to be with you all participants from different countries here. I am coming from Rome, bringing another trade wind. I'm going to change the perspective a little bit. We started with India, the Indian situation, and then with the global situation, with the refugees, and then all the systems. Now I'm going to talk where to get the funds. And they say when you start talking about funds, everyone listens. You don't have to look for attention, you get it. Fine. Yeah. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the landscape of funding, mainly from the faith-based sources. Go ahead. May I know who is doing the doing? Yeah. Okay. The first topic will be on faith-based funding landscape. It's not only for those who are Catholic organizations and also collaborators with them, but also mainly the sources. We have the different sources of funding. The Catholic pastoral donor agencies, the Catholic social funding organizations, and the secular funding. So today I'm going to talk mostly about the Catholic funding. Yeah? Okay, that's good. The second point will be the organizational competence. There may be funding available, but are you eligible to get it? That's the issue. So that will be dealt on the second. And third will be the process. What process you need to have in order to secure funding. I hope that will give you an overview of how you can proceed with your PDOs and convert them into organizations that are going to get this funding. Now let's start with the different vehicles for fundraising. You are quite familiar with that, I think, with the 7 pillars of SRG. SRG is already training a lot on these vehicles. So I would classify this vehicle into 3 different areas. The first one is the individual giving, where you have the different vehicles. What you see, crowdfunding, direct mailing, things you are already using to raise funds. I'm not going to touch it. The second area is about community fundraising, where you do a lot of events and you raise funds. The third area is where the big funds are. The big fishes are here. The whales, sharks, and whatever you want to call. So the donor funding through grants. This is the area that I'm going to deal in elaboration. There are also funds with corporate social responsibility and faith-based impact investment. These 2 are not my topics for the day. I'm going to deal with donor funding through grants. And I hope you know about these 2 things, with the corporate social responsibility, the company funding, and then the different investments that are available. I think there is another topic that's going to deal with that. Good. Now, what is the possible for project funding among all the various vehicles? I'm not going to say my area is the most important one, but this is a very productive one. I can give you an example of my own experience. Like when I was working in India, especially in north of India, our province, we had 13 missions. And all the 13 missions we could develop and sustain through projects and grants. From the congregation, we only spent money for being in the place. But all the schools, hostels, the health centers, social development activities, all these mission activities we could cover with the grant funding. So it's possible that you, with your PDOs and your ministries, it's possible to fundraise. Now between the cup and the lip, there is a slip. It's possible, but will we be able to do it? That's the main question. I'm going to show you within this short time, it's possible, and we can, every one of you, all the PDOs here, can move into this realm. So we have to see where the funds are. Where are they located? There are three major areas. We have the Catholic social donor agencies. We have the Catholic social, the first is the pastoral and then the social. These two are Catholics run or Catholic organized grants, which are available for Catholics, and especially with the priests, sisters, and all the collaborators. And there is another big area of secular donors, which I am not going to deal now. Maybe in the later stage, if we have chances, we will talk. I would invite you to see and locate any of these agencies. You have already worked with. Can you say any of these agencies you have already worked with? Yes, Missio. Okay. Conrad Hilton? Yes. Aid to Church in Need? Okay. There are plenty. There are hundreds. There are thousands of agencies. So sometimes our knowledge of agencies can be very limited. So we need to enhance it. I'm just giving you an overview of things. And now I'm going into details. It's not only the donor agencies in general. There are congregations which run their own donor agencies. For example, if you take the Jesuits, they have 13 agencies around the world which funds all the Jesuit projects. You may be wondering how Jesuits are able to run big universities, colleges, development centers. They have a big backbone of 13 organizations raising funds for them in millions of dollars and euros. And St. Ignatius, during his last days, after doing his spiritual exercises, he was preparing the mission procures. Today we have the mission procures in the congregation because the Jesuits already started it long back. Because he knew if you want to start new missions, you need funding. And without organizations, you cannot raise funds. So he created the organizations, and that's what you see here, 13 organizations. And you have started the PDOs in your congregations, and it's a very good move towards raising funds. But are we able to do it or not? That is the main questions. We will try to answer it a little bit. Now, if you see the realm of pastoral donors, let me little bit clarify on the terminology. I mix the word grants and projects. That's because of the two different systems we have. Grants are used mostly in the United States and Canada, whereas projects are used in Europe. So when we talk about European donors, we don't talk about grants, we talk about projects. But they mean the same. And also the donor agencies or donor organizations, it means the same. So there's nothing to worry too much on that. Now, among the Catholic pastoral donors, which are the different types? So we have the Propaganda Fide in Rome. They support more than 900 mission dioceses all over the world. They support the bishops and different dioceses with different types of projects. Every bishop has minimum 3 projects every year, and they are well aware of it. The Holy Childhood or Papal Foundation, that's Vatican-based donors, and usually accessible to the bishops and the dioceses. Not much to the congregations, but with Holy Childhood, it's possible a little bit. Then we come to Catholic Church-inspired donors, which are very big. Missio, Church in Need, MIVA, and all the organizations you see in Germany. They are church-based and they do a lot of funding around the world. There are congregations, individual congregations running donor agencies. Sisters of Peter Claver. Any project below 10,000 for missionary needs, they are ready to fund. Different monasteries give mass stipends and also small projects. Intra-congregational donors. I showed about the Jesuits. We have Salesians here. The Salesians also have 5 big organizations and 23 small organizations for fundraising. So every congregation has got its own setup. If your congregation is not having, you have to do the setup because the big organizations have already done their homework. And that's why they are able to establish and fund their mission activities in the global level without much problem. And of course, I have added clericians also. We have our main office in Rome where I work. We have also offices in Germany, in Spain, and the US, which raises funds for us. We have a centrally coordinated way of doing projects. We fund around €1 million over 60 projects every year. So it's already happening outside, and now we will see our situation gradually. The Catholic dioceses in Germany, in Canada, there are individual dioceses that fund projects. Then there are bishops' conferences. The US Bishops' Conference have a lot of projects for Africa, Middle East, and Asia. The Italian Bishops' Conference has plenty of projects, mainly on the social development side. Then we come to the private foundations, Serra International, Little Way Association, Loyola Foundation, in hundreds. So if we say that we don't know where to get funds, we are missing something. We have to get into this realm, this field of the donor agencies to get to know them. For what reason do they fund? You have all the reasons for which you are looking for funds. For your pastoral work, for the vehicles, construction of seminaries, construction of convents, and these are the things you are looking for funds. And they are all funded by these organizations. Now the question is, how much funds are available? In the year 2003 only, we have 143 million euros for 6,000 projects in 138 countries by Church in Need. We have the website for reference. The next question is, what is the total amount all the Catholic organizations are funding? We don't have a single area where we can get this answer because we have various types of donor agencies. I have tried to put in a possible number with my experience of connecting with different agencies. Every year, a minimum of 50,000 projects, small and big, are funded for around 20 to 25 billion euros. So that's the field we are talking about. We cannot say the church has left us without resources. God is providing. Are we ready? Are we fine-tuning ourselves to get the funds? The problem is not with lack of funds. Problem is with our fishing net. In the ocean, there are a lot of fishes, big fishes, small fishes. What type of net are you using? Okay. Now we will start with the compliances. See, every organization has got its requirements. If you take Missio, this is their channel. They receive the project application with all the recommendations. The first consultant does the review, then the group reviews, then it goes to the board of directors. It's yes or no. If it's yes, the contract is done and the money is sent, the project is done, report goes, and then the information to the donors. Because most of these organizations receive funds from their donors using most of the techniques that you use. They use crowdfunding, they use social fundraising, events, lot of vehicles they use to fundraise. So they have to give back, tell their donors about the impacts that is created on the ground. And you people are very important because you are the ones who are creating the impact. The funding agencies cannot do anything without you. You are very important in the chain of events where the funding is made into impacts, converted into impacts. Okay. Now, a brief look into the secular donors. And these are big donors. Miserior, Manos Unidas. And most of the European countries have their own secular organization for funding. Now, little bit to think. The secular Catholic agencies are very much connected with the Catholic social teaching. And nowadays with Laudato Si. So most funding goes to renewable energy, disaster management, and greening of the earth. So the agencies are very much connected and then they fund accordingly. So you cannot say, okay, 10 years back you were funding on this sector, now you are not funding. Yes, they are always updating and of course they will announce it in their website. You can easily find out. So they have different sectors. Sometimes they get funds from the government and then the requirements are very strong. For example, if Miserior is getting funds from the German government, then the auditing system is very strong. So they will give it to those donors, those implementers who have a very strong financial structure to implement. So if your organization is not very strong, then they will not fund you. So you can become a partner when you have your financial strong. So that's why I appreciate SRG, which also has a financial structure. So they advise on maintaining your financial structure strongly. So some agencies have their own staff in the global south, and they want us to connect with them. So for Miserior, for example, they have their own staff in many countries. Manos Unidas does not have staff, but they always come for visits. They have to visit your project before they fund you. Okay, all these are some of the landscape issues. There is a general shrinking of funds. That's also connected with the reputation of the Catholic Church. And so some people are very busy tarnishing the reputation of the church. And whenever there is a pedophilia issue or any other issue that's coming, we may think it's only a moral issue. No, it's a financial issue and it affects you and me because it impacts the funding. People will not fund an organization that is morally not right. So the church always tries, especially the church in Europe and US, is trying to give our project a morally good view because we are also losing funds if the other ways it happens. And now the church is growing in Asia and Africa. And there are more indigenous clergy, indigenous sisters who are heading the organizations. We are no more part of Europe. We are indigenous. And so the problem is where to get funds is more pronounced. When there were people coming from Europe, they knew where to get the funds. So there is a need for knowing a lot about the where to get funds. Now let's see the organizational compliance. You have to specify sometimes who is asking for funds. Is it the congregation or your NGO? When we say faith-based organizations, strictly it means the NGOs of the religious organizations. So if you have not registered your NGO in the government, then you may not be eligible to get funds from many of the Catholic social agencies. So there is a need to know all these things. That's why I said between the cup and the lip there is a slip. There are funds available. We are in need of funds, but we need to do the compliance correctly. Then project offices of the congregation. And this is where you score the better point, having a PDO. But there could be a difficulty within the PDO if your PDO is not trained to work in grants. You may be doing a lot of fundraising through other vehicles. But to train the PDO to work with grants and projects, we need to fine-tune. And we are also working in SRG, how to do that in capacity building of the PDOs to engage in grant-based fundraising. Of course, we need trained personnel. Okay. Now, one-time requirement. There are people who are very happy when they get one project approved, and they finish with that. No. Your missions, your advocacies are sustainable or permanent. So you need to, as a congregational leader or as a PDO director, you need to see how constantly you raise funds to sustain your mission. As I said, 13 missions we were running, continuously we were getting projects. So when one project goes down, already the next project is in process. And projects don't get approved like individual donors. We may take minimum 6 months to prepare, send the project. Then there is a lot of questions coming. We need to respond. So this is a process which we need to do. The training of the personnel is very important. We need to keep constantly training. And here is the donor organizations. Where to find the donor organizations? I was talking about the directory. So this is called the MPS funding guide, which has got around 400 Catholic and social organizations which would fund the Catholic PDOs quite easily. So it's already worked out book. This is available in the website, Mission Project Service, or those who are based in Rome, they can also get from me, because I am also part of the Mission Project Service research team. Maybe we can later think of making it available through SRG. Okay. So finally, what is the dynamics of the grant processing? What should you do in order to get the funds? So there is a heavy competition already. The agencies, the known Catholic agencies receive 10 to 20 times the number of projects that they can fund. If they can fund 100 projects, they receive 1,000 plus applications. So you need to be competitive, though all are from fathers and sisters and bishops. So there is no merit on that side. The merit should be on the quality of your proposals. So what is needed is hand-holding and consultancy. The PDOs require constant support. So that is possible also through SRG. A constant support in order to work with the different donors. So you already have established your advocacies. So the needs are very clear. What is to be done is to convert the needs into project proposals and to align it to the right agencies. I hope you get my point clear. Okay, good. So there are different trainings going on. This is part of Tulip trainings in September. It's on-site and online in Dubai. mainly for the religious. So this is one such training. We are also thinking of doing some trainings with SRG, with a capacitation model of program development. Okay, my concluding remarks. As I said, you already have the basic office. What is required is this extra component of how to work with the donor organizations, because it is not that simple. It has got its own dynamics. You need to prepare yourself for that and to identify the right person. And I think most of the people who have come here are the right people, because you have the passion to raise funds for the mission. And it's a very big service. It's a selfless service. It's easy to raise funds for me, but to raise funds for my organization, you have to sacrifice. So it's a good thing you are all doing here. Okay, finally, I would say, without investing, you cannot do the harvesting. So sometimes what happens is people want funds, but when we ask, are you ready to to spend some money to get the funds? No. We want to get funds for free. No, there is no such free meal. You have to have a budget, you have to invest, and then you get your returns. So with this, I close. I hope many of you have many doubts, and most of the doubts we can do in the panel discussion, or you can personally meet with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father Wiener, for a truly winning presentation. Now, our next presentation will be done online. So before I present to you our next presenter, I would like to remind you that the tables are now all set outside for your break. So you just feel free to go out anytime you want to grab your snacks or your drinks as we continue with our presentations. On to our next presentation. The next presenter is the director for Spring Rain Global Philanthropy in the United States, overseeing Spring Rain Global's operations in the US and venture philanthropic programs. She is also the production and operations manager for a large mortgage bank in San Diego. She's adept in managing, strategizing financial plans with over 20 years experience in real estate, finance, and project consulting. She joined the SRG family only last April 2017, and this has practically allowed her to combine her passions for business and philanthropy. So this morning, she'll be talking about sustainable philanthropy, Philanthro-Capitalism strategies among funders. Let us welcome and listen to Miss Stephanie Lucero.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. Sorry I can't be there with you in person, but I am excited to come to you tonight and talk about Philanthro-Capitalism, which is something that is near and dear to my heart. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. So today, Glenda asked me to talk about Philanthro-Capitalism and funding trends and empowering what I'm going to call grassroots and faith-based organizations. I have to say before I get started, I feel like this morning's speakers have all been excellent, and I'm in very good company this morning in providing you different ways to tackle the need for funds. And in Father Lord, following you about the grants and the like, it's always interesting to hear different perspectives on grants, as they are very difficult to get. So as we diversify our portfolios of philanthropy, Philanthro-Capitalism is naturally going to flow as another alternative to the grants, but not to just be used on its own, but actually in conjunction with the other financing. We really are looking at a more holistic approach to philanthropy that will allow you to fund your advocacies. So as we start this process, I want to begin with talking about what is Philanthro-Capitalism. For those of you that might be new to the term or want a reminder on the term, it is a blend, obviously, at the site of it, of philanthropy and capitalism, which naturally lends itself to the definition of blending business principles and strategies with philanthropic efforts to drive social change. It does focus on different kinds of business expertise and leveraging those resources, looks at measuring impact and outcomes and making sure that funds are being used optimally, and obviously wants you to work on collaborative partnerships, meaning that you're not just having one person ask and one person give, but rather work together, kind of like in that circular economy that Mr. Fernandez was speaking to earlier, to accomplish the goals that you have, the funding needs that you have, and the funding goals that you have. It's a newer paradigm. And I am going to be drawing on a lot, but it's not completely new, but I am going to be drawing on a lot of information from a book called Philanthro-Capitalism, How Giving Can Save the World. It was written by Matthew Bishop and Michael Green. And it does capitalize on the fact that there is a fifth evolution of funder, donor, philanthropist we're in the midst of. And that funder, donor, philanthropist is more entrepreneurial. There are more entrepreneurial dollars that are being given to philanthropy. And if you just need a few examples, you can think of people like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, all of which are entrepreneurs that have gone in, that have now dedicated vast majorities of their fortunes to their earned fortunes to philanthropy. And in doing so, they are bringing their mentalities, they are bringing their mindset to the philanthropic world because of the way that they have made their money. So the strategies that I will talk about today are really based, do have a very big foundation in entrepreneurship, which I think is a wonderful opportunity for Spring Rain Global, our PDOs, and other organizations like ours, because we can really showcase what we have to offer them as far as already existing infrastructure. And I'll get to that further later. To start the first strategy, we're looking at having, I want to make sure, strategy is to create a foundation with capacity building. I was really excited to see this. Obviously at Spring Rain Global, this has been near and dear to our hearts. It's been something we've been talking about for a very long time in our organization's existence. But they really are seeing, these philanthro-capitalists, the need to create offices and micro businesses, if you will, that will allow you to have a greater impact. They're looking at putting dollars into organizations like the PDOs that you have, because they recognize there's limited resources, especially in faith-based organizations, but others as well, other grassroots as well. And that it also helps you to overcome technology challenges. So if we keep in mind that these are entrepreneurs who have made a lot of their fortunes in different industries, technology is a big one. And they know how technology can amplify what you can do in the world of philanthropy and in your business of mission. And one of the things that we like to say I like to say in Spring Rain Global is our PDOs are in the business of mission. You really are. And what we do is just to help you to enhance your effectiveness. And how we do that is coming together at conferences like these and sharing our ideas together and working on the different pillars that we have to build your capacity and to build your reach and to build your sustainability factor and therefore enhance the impact that you will have, which is what they're looking for. So I was very encouraged to see capacity building being at the top of it. I was very encouraged to think that if we were to do more presentations to these Philanthro-Capitalists about the benefits and the need for capacity building, that we could attract dollars at a higher rate. Strategy number 2 is strategic investments through measurable outcomes. Of course, we're going to talk about investing. We're talking about Philanthro-Capitalism after all. And obviously, they're going to want to see measurable outcomes. They're going to want to understand where their money is going. How is it having an impact? What is it doing in the grand and the bigger picture? So when you're thinking about how you're going to speak to that strategy, if you're speaking with a Philanthro-Capitalist, you definitely want to clarify your missions. I heard someone talk about Father JP delivering a speech yesterday. I have heard him speak before about the hospitals. He definitely has a tendency to talk about their commitment to healthcare. So whether your advocacy that you are advocating for happens to be healthcare, education, or any other one on the spectrum, you really want to clarify that, and you want people to come to identify your organization with your mission or missions. Then you want to identify your specific goals. You want to set specific goals and identify what they are so they know what you're trying to accomplish. Obviously, if we're looking at this from a business perspective, we're going to speak in their language, and having those goals to say, no, it's not just some esoteric, some idea in the sky that we're bringing to you, but we have very good reasons for this, and we want to share with you the goals of why we want to undertake these endeavors. Of course, when you integrate this, you want to be able to work in the impact. So you want to be able to have the measurables there so that you can tell them how you're going to help them gauge what their impact is with the dollars that you're requesting, and how it can either give back a return, whether that return be actual dollars and cents, or if that return would be something more on a social impact. And then you want to have you want to be able to scale those things. And scaling is huge. Scaling is where a lot of people fail. There is a book called Scale or Fail, and there is a reason there is a book called Scale or Fail. A lot of people, a lot of businesses start small and they're doing things really well. And as they start to scale it, it doesn't work the same way. So if you can actually have a system set up behind what you want funded that would allow for scalability, not only could that be replicated in other PDOs inside of Spring Rain, for instance, but it could be replicated across the globe. And a lot of these Philanthro-Capitalists are taking on global issues. So if you're able to be that petri dish for them that they can then expand into, that could be very attractive for them. Finally, and definitely not the last thing to mention here, but iterative learning. And this is something that philanthropy has struggled with for a very long time. A lot of donors or would-be donors want to know, if I give to you, what is the outcome? I want to know the good that was done, and it better be good, and you better not fail. You better deliver on your promise. And what we're seeing is that sometimes you need to try things out. So the fact that their strategy can involve an allowance to fail forward is very encouraging in Philanthro-Capitalism, and really does make sense because a lot of businesses don't succeed at first. And so I'm happy to see that this entrepreneurial mindset is being brought to the philanthropic landscape through Philanthro-Capitalism. Strategy 3 is collaboration and partnerships. We do not live in a bubble. And I know we all know this, but I think oftentimes we think, okay, we're an organization that needs something and we just need to find that donor and that match. And we want to look for, if you're playing a memory game, you want to turn over the right cards that match each other. And there we're going to have this great marriage. But the reality is that there can be a lot of players when you're funding something. There can be funders who can also be business partners. There can be secular organizations that want to make an impact in the communities that you serve and want to partner with you in a way that amplifies your reach. Government plays a big role. Governments in a lot of places are the safety net or try to be the safety net. And so, you know, partnering with governments can be very powerful, especially if those governments have dollars to spend that can be leveraged and just worked out into the entire transaction. And of course, other nonprofits and businesses. Many nonprofits are tackling the same systemic social issues. So it makes sense that you wouldn't waste resources, that you might combine your efforts, you might collaborate, you might work together, you might try to come up with some sort of plan or scheme that would allow you to really be able to tackle your cause in a much more efficient way. And when you're talking about business, efficiency is key. So working together, not being in a bubble, understanding how to leverage everybody and capitalize on their strengths can really help to enhance the situation and make the impact even greater. Strategy number 4 is innovation and calculated risk-taking. When I saw this, I was like, well, the good news is they're looking at calculated risk. The bad news is they're looking at calculated risk. And I laughed at that because it's great to see that you're innovating. They want to see something different. They know that we haven't been able to keep up with the needs. The UN constantly tells us that every year it's growing, it's growing, it's growing, and they tell us it's going to continue to grow. And they do want to see meaningful change. So it's great to see that they're embracing innovation, which means that we can think outside the box. It does mean that if we think something might work better, that we have the space in which to talk about it, discuss it, and find a path forward. And also, like I said earlier, being able to fail forward is very, very important, because every time you try something new, it doesn't mean you're always going to succeed right off the bat. So making sure that you have that space to fail forward is very, very important. But when you're taking a calculated risk, it's also important that you understand that risk and that you be able to articulate that. So when Mr. Fernandez was speaking to earlier about looking at that risk, here it is again. So you're also seeing common themes in this morning's speeches, because that is a thread that everyone wants to understand. Before they put their dollars out there, before you do something, invest in something, we want to know what that calculated risk is and that you've thought things through in such a way that you have your contingency plans, and we can then take a chance on your innovation. Strategy number 5 is utilizing advocacy and influence to drive systemic change. This is going beyond the dollars and cents, and this definitely speaks to today. Influencers are a hot topic in every country around the globe. Every social media platform is talking about them. You can't escape an influencer, and you have probably purchased from an influencer or 10. It's just happening. But what makes it great about that is because these individuals, especially the Philanthro-Capitalists, who hang on to a certain cause or advocacy, as we like to call them, they have these platforms on which to bring light and to really educate a very broad audience about what you're up to. So I love the fact that Philanthro-Capitalism is not just, well, let me see, I'm going to help and I'm going to give a grant or a donation, and if you know about me, you're there. It really is giving a voice and giving momentum to a movement. If you get an influencer or Philanthro-Capitalistic influencer behind you to kind of carry that movement. So really how you speak about and how you get someone, enroll a Philanthro-Capitalist to be part of your movement is very important and can make a huge difference in the visibility and getting your story out there and humanize your cause, so that you're not just asking, you're showing, you're telling, and you're targeting. And all of that is very important, not just in business, but in philanthropy. Strategy number 6 is ethical engagement and long-term commitment. I will tell you that, this is important for faith-based organizations. It's especially talked about when you're talking about big hedge funds or investment accounts. And it's wonderful to see that people are respecting faith-based values and understanding cultural sensitivities. I think that's great. But what really encouraged me about seeing this strategy that's unfold was to know that they're committed to long-term impact. And I think for a long time, philanthropy has been, okay, I'm in and I'm out. I'm one and done. I did my duty, or what have you. And really to see a commitment to, if I'm going to take this on, how is it going to sustain itself? What are we doing today to sustain ourselves later? And obviously there's a lot of things that can be done in there that I can't discuss now, but I was very encouraged to say this and wanted to bring that that positivity to the room. Why funders should consider faith-based organizations in philanthropic endeavors. I kind of feel like a broken record when I speak about this, but I do want to bring it up. I truly believe that faith-based organizations, especially in the Catholic Church, from my knowledge and experience, is an untapped resource. However, I also believe that they're a resource that is very established in the communities in which they serve, and they've been working on that infrastructure for decades or centuries in some cases. And because of that, they understand the communities and they understand what is really needed to get things done. And why that is so significant when you think about Philanthro-Capitalism is that a lot of people, a lot of businesses have to invest in feasibility studies. They have to invest in that infrastructure. They have to invest in the concept and idea to see whether or not it's going to work. We have that already, that investment already made most of the way. Yes, there might need to be some enhancements. Yes, there might need to be capacity building, offices established, education to be brought to them. However, it's there, waiting to really explode, boom. It's almost like another kind of industrial revolution just waiting to happen in philanthropy. And so I bring this up to you today because I want to remind you of your superpowers that I spoke about last year. And I want to remind you that that is the message that would really speak to a Philanthro-Capitalist who is bringing more business-like ideas and concepts to their philanthropy. I love Peter Drucker. For those that don't know him, he is a business management guru. And I love this quote: "The best way to predict the future is to create it." I truly believe we are creating our futures by adopting these different principles and adapting to them. And many of our PDOs are already showcasing what is possible by just taking little steps every day and working towards their ultimate goals. So I love it. I can't wait for us to continue to create. And I want to conclude just by bringing it all together for you to let you know the strategic outcome by implementing these strategies. Keep in mind that we are in what they're calling our 5th evolution of philanthropy. That evolution is a shift towards the entrepreneurial philanthropist. Very important, because that mentality, that mindset is being brought to what they did, to their philanthropy and their business of philanthropy and where they're putting their money. They're acknowledging that we need to evolve and grow in a more holistic way. So that's amazing, because now we have this momentum behind us, a support behind us to make sure that we are growing. And therefore they're pivoting to approach philanthropy in a more business-like way, where existing and would-be funders are forging roadmaps to empower the bottom-up warriors. You guys are bottom-up warriors. Our PDOs are bottom-up warriors. You are in those communities. You are the bottom-up warriors, and they do need you to be part of their process because you are already there and can help to amplify their dollars. Their end goal is to help communities combat systemic social issues by leveraging business, government, and the nonprofit sectors to optimize the funds needed through Philanthro-Capitalism efforts with the strategies mentioned today. Essentially, guys, everyone's got to get involved. We are changing the future by creating our future, by leveraging all the resources. Philanthropic organizations cannot do this alone. We need businesses, we need governments, we need the common person, we need nonprofits, we need for-profits, we need everybody, all of humanity working towards making the changes and getting the philanthropic dollars there into getting into the communities and making life better in the communities in which you serve. It is so important. This is not just a philanthropy problem. It is a humanity problem. And Philanthro-Capitalism gets business involved to help solve that problem. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed what I had to offer you today. And I look forward to answering any questions you have in the panel. Thank you very, very, very much. Love to all.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Yes, I'm sure some people will be very happy to ask you questions during the panel discussion. In the meantime, we move on to our next presentation. The next speaker needs no long presentation. We already had a chance to listen to her yesterday. And this morning, she'll be talking about practically about the model which she herself came up with. In fact, she published about it. She wrote a book on it entitled Spring Rain Global, the Pillar Capacitation Model, which I'm sure we'll be understanding more from her talk this morning. I'm referring to the president and the CEO, the founder of the Spring Rain Global Consultancy Incorporated. So let us welcome Dr. Glenda Antonio, who will be talking about capacity building using the SRG 7-pillar capacitation model.
Good morning. So, I'm just here to just quickly refresh for the information of everyone who has been with Spring Rain for quite a time, and for those who have just joined, and for the funders and implementers who are also here in this room. So I said, as everyone was saying, we're called for the mission, and our role here is to bridge the gap between facilitating those funding to where it needs to be. And to do that, we need to be capacitated. Just like when you go for sports, you need to practice. You need to know when and how. There's discipline in time. There's opportunity to revisit whether your tools are ready or not. If you go for war, or if you go to rescue for war, you have to be equipped. And this capacity building journey is not a theory simply by the knowledge that we learned, but it is a product of our journey over the past almost 2 decades, being with everyone, from funders to implementers and to everyone. So allow me to just quickly share so that we will take a glimpse of why are we talking about doing the landscape in India. If we're too busy preparing for Philippines, should we say India should come later because we're not yet ready because we're busy in the Philippines? When the call for help is there, time is of essence. And for time we cannot turn back time. If someone is hungry over in Africa, or there's a struggle going on in Manila right now, Father Ray's bothered enough to think about the people there. We cannot just say later. something has to be done and acted upon. And I believe that the birth of this 7-pillar capacitation model, proprietary under Spring Rain Global, is a product of God's providence. Because He wants us to be more systematic in the way we do things, so that His providence will just come and attract everyone else. So the 7-pillar capacitation model, it all started with the 6th pillar. We added the 7th one, which is the spirituality. I want you to give a high emphasis on the PDOs who are starting up especially, and to the existing PDOs who are also scaling up. I'm sure a lot of you were asking, okay, there is a capacity building opportunity for grant funding that we have opened last January. And as we are trying to kick this off, we're working on how will we get there so that as we implement after this conference, this program, how will you implement the whole 7-pillar model? Please take note that if this is a social enterprise, the inventory of SRG or your PDO, the inventory is what? Human capital. You have to have human capital to run the system. But you have to be innovative in the way you run your human capital. Second, the main thrust are your advocacies. You cannot have a philanthropy office without a cause. So your cause is highly important as well. So in all the 7-pillar, leadership and governance, I don't have to explain, but just to sprout it to understand what are we going to do moving forward. We will be putting systems in place. We will be putting accreditation in place. How many of you here loved if your business wants to be accredited to excellence? Syempre, kung business, we all want. But don't we also want our humanitarian efforts be put to excellence as well? I think that is the thrust that we are going to have. That's why I invited Mr. Angel Fernandez to come on board, Dr. Philip Tan, Attorney Evelyn Trani, Father Lord Winner, everyone else who would play a role, people from Singapore, because we as an organization in Spring Rain need to also have the organizational capacity to coach all of you. Then I saw that the problem was not actually money. The problem was our readiness for both parties to begin the journey. If you begin the journey and you're ready and we're ready, then we plug in. So leadership and governance is important. So when you choose your people, how do you choose the right people for your office? Who would be the best cut for your director? For the congregations, you discern, right? And whatever is enlightened by the Holy Spirit, you put that person in the office for philanthropy. But chances are, where would you see that that person fits? Because in systems implementation, the very leader is very important. Father John Paul could attest to that. Because when we started their philanthropic office, the first person, the person that was assigned there was too busy. Father JP, I could remember he was just at the side, assigned in communications. But then after 3 months, the chameleon was very much ready to navigate. If nothing is happening, it's not about the system. It's about the people also that you put in the office that's not moving. So don't blame anyone but our accountability to put the right human capital in the office. So when Father JP took over, he was just the perfect cut for the person to be there. Corporate in his mindset, but believing in the end goal. Believe me, after that, it made a turnaround. Same story with Father Orven Gonzaga. When they had assigned someone, where's Father Orven? There you go. When we had also the PDO installed, we installed a parish priest, and the parish priest told me, I will have more concentration in the parish rather than in philanthropy. So what happened? The provincial navigated and then put the person. It's not because the person is not cut. Believe me, when the system is in place, we have the system. The right person will just follow the system. But if that person will not follow, then it would be difficult. When Father Orven took over, he flew and made the turnaround of the office. Vital to the system is human capital. Before even asking for support on capacity building, please make sure that you're ready to have the right people installed in your office. Second, your programs are very important. People, your congregation, your NGOs, you need the advocacies in order to attract grants. Even if we ask for funding for capacity building, your measurement, as Mr. Angel Fernandez was saying, where is the KPI? It would be on raised funds and how much of these advocacies are sustained because of the office. So in other words, your program development plays a role. I have talked with Father Lord because in the area of the church, there is a way how to connect with the right people, so you get with the Manos Unidas, with Miserior, and all of that, and it takes connections. I will do my part to ensure that I get to the board connections, but please do your part to prepare also. While I'm brewing on the side, you brew also on the other side. Would that be okay? Don't say, where is the funds? We will wait. And then when the funds will be there, you're not ready. Please let us do our part, and we do our part. That's for the grant funding. For corporate family office funding, these people here in the seat here are working and brewing towards getting on board to family offices, to wealthy people, to high net worth individuals where we can use our influence to inspire them. Imagine this room would be all funders, and we're talking there. I'm sure the Spirit will come. So many convening on high net worth individuals will happen. Mr. Kengombe just told me that in Geneva, there's something happening in November. I will be speaking for our ecosystem. And believe me, I can speak by the grace of God, but my speech will be as strong as your data that you're going to give to me. I don't want that we will not amplify the voice of our collective efforts. So your programs is very important. All of these are nothing without your programs. You have to revisit them. We will work closely on this together. Secular, corporate funding, impact investing. Adrian, where are you? There. Adrian is going to be part of our team to work on social enterprise. Father Ray has been bugging me about social enterprise. And Father, thank you for your patience. We have to drag enough because we don't want to just get funding. We want these donors to be partners in our organization, not for a single funding. So trust the process. There's a team who will be helping you on impact investing and social enterprise. The church has a lot of social enterprise opportunities, but we will do more collaboration on that from a lot of things already. So the philanthropy pillar should look into your funding opportunities. Now, in your data for funders, please take note. Gone are the days that you will fear that your funders, you don't want to give it to your PDO office because you want to keep it to yourself, especially for priests and nuns who have an office and you know a lot of organizations. Please centralize. If you don't, you will lose time. And time is of essence. Joseph from the Manila Angel Investors told me, if I could have flown last Sunday, I would have reached your conference. His schedule was just yesterday, but he couldn't make it because of the flood. We will never know what will happen along with time. But as so long as time is in your control at that moment, savor that moment and do not delay. As I said, discern, but if the discernment is clear already, don't discern too long. The Lord will continue to still give. I've learned that. I've learned that. I discern also. Sometimes my staff maybe are impatient already. They keep coming back to me. Glenda, what's your decision? Let me think it over. Maybe I pray Holy Spirit will also land in my people and in my team. I said, Lord, speak to my team if I cannot get it. And when Anne tells me, I think, Glens, this is what we're talking about, or Nicole or Presta or whoever will tell me, and I said, I think that's what God is telling me. God answers your leading through people. So it's very important in philanthropy that you start loving the humanity in you and the humanity in the people you put in that office. Financial planning. There is a course in financial planners. Can you please stand, those who have taken the course? Reverend Father Orven, stand up. Sister Mila. Who else? Anne-Marie, Kleinid, Bobby. We've started, Father Ray, Melanie. Ayan. We have started sharing the course of financial planning in our group. Father Gerald also took that course. They will be graduating in August. Why do we have to do financial planning? A lot of you have assets, land. A lot of you have come to me and said, how do we want to develop this land? Looking at it sporadically will not work. But thinking of the urban, let's just call it urban planning or whatever you call it, is important, is essential. I went to Sister Marian's space in Bataan, and I imagined what Vincent K. A. Lim told me about how do you maximize a land. But I tell you, to all the congregations here, you have the proven living testament that God has and will be with you. Your buildings, as lay, we cannot afford to have those big buildings, I tell you. But how come that in the struggle of your life, God provide you big infrastructure? Because God is telling you that I can provide. Do not challenge me, I can provide. But for the people who are suffering, do your part and we do our part. We would be there, but you will also collaborate along with us. And the funders, I'm happy because they have understood the church. For all these years, I've been fighting for our voice be heard. Finally, it has opened gates for corporates. AVPN has seriously considered our network to be a force for good. Global impact investing. Christian is serious to give us support. That is why we open that gates for us. So financial planning is important because money has value. A lot of you want to keep your money. You won't say, I won't pay for training because I don't have money. God knows your bank accounts. Remember this. If Spring Rain doesn't know, God knows. And for all you know, when money is not used and money is not growing, you may all say we're okay, but we also need to live. We also need to eat. We have to take care of the organization that supports you all the way. Otherwise, we will diversify other services otherwise. But we're here because we're here for the long haul. Trust in that when you are equipped with financial planning, you will understand value of money. If you don't grow your money, by buying power, it will be lost. Inflation will kill the buying power of your money. Invest in people. Invest in people. The first blessing you will have, you're providing money for that person to have something to buy food for the family. At the end of the day, you're giving livelihood first. Second, that person will be used by God to talk to the funders, so His providence will come in place. Financial planning will teach you not to be kuripot. Please, don't be kuripot for the Lord. Am I making sense? Do not be mediocre for Him. Give Him the excellent time and resources you would ever imagine. Ako, when God gave this enterprise to me, I said, to the least of my resources, I plow back. That was my commitment. So please, let us be in that sync. Maybe a lot of you will receive the capacity building fund. Titipirin nyo pa rin. maybe you won't hire people. Still, kaya naman eh. Because we have $100,000, we'll just spend the 20,000. We'll save the 80,000. If there's one who will know your bank account again, it is him. Let our conscience. And you tell us that you don't have, please, from now on, tell us you have. Let's have a mindset of abundance. Let's have a mindset of abundance. The real people who are scarce are the people praying they will receive. I still believe all of us in this room have the capacity to do so. Data. Data is very important, and I think Dr. Mark, where's Dr. Mark? There you go. Ako mga alay ko dito. Dr. Mark Chen, along with Dr. Pyrach from Taiwan and Thailand and the Philippines, will be working closely on data. Data mapping. When we wanted to gather the data, how do you measure the data? You measure the data in many different focused areas. May I request the people from Bicol region to please stand. Bicol region. Such a force to reckon with, I tell you. Fathers and sisters and lay, salamat po. What was the leading? Maybe there is something we need to map on a region level. And the leaders in Bicol are ready to take up and say, let one Bicol map the standards to address the gap. Both priest, bishop, and lay, they represented. They don't have enough. They've been spotted by calamities. But when we sat down, they said, we choose to go there. We choose to go to Bangkok because we know we will see hope there. And if we see that hope, we bring that to Bicol region. That was their thrust, I believe, that they're coming here. And data needs people. The Pope asked us to do synodality, or even Father Lord will say, where's the data? How do you want us to help you? You cannot just say, I'm hungry, need help. No, you have to have the data. So when we implement data mapping, I encourage you to put the right data officer in your team. Not the one who just can encode. Encoder is different from data professional. I have commissioned a partner. She couldn't just be here, but she will come up with a boot camp on data. A caption, a data boot camp, database boot camp. I tell you, more than any solicitation letter, data will attract funding. No words to say, show me the data, as Jong was saying. So data mapping or database management is important. Ecosystem building, do not work in silos, please. If you work alone, imagine. You work alone, you go to your office, you think, where will I go next? But if you think of the ecosystem, we all can move together as one entity. You have your own ecosystem as a diocese. As a region, you have the whole Bicol. As a church, we are an ecosystem. As a common advocacy, we are an ecosystem. If we don't think that way, we're missing again time and efficiency. So that's where it is. And of course, I added the spirituality because this is where we integrate our resiliency. What do we do when nothing is happening? What will we do when everything is happening? You don't just smile because there's funding. You also smile when you navigate. So don't pin us or don't pin your PDO director if nothing is happening. Something is just been brewing. For as so long as you're moving, things will be okay. Our greatest CEO is up there. Who among you don't believe in that? I believe in that. I so believe in that. While we're doing things on here on the ground, he is also brewing for us. So the threefold strategy of this is that you install the system by following the trainings, but training is not enough. You need to come up with initiatives to attract access to capital. How do you apply the training? Write those grants. Submit those grants to the right organization. Get some initiatives on doing the launch. Oh, we did already the launching, that's it. Are the funds continue to come? It will, but you need to start up the infrastructure. So you have to attract funding by doing initiatives. Just training, nothing will happen. Money cannot come down from heaven. It needs to have something going on. So these initiatives is very important. And of course, the advocacy implementation for impact report. Now, all ambassadors handling advocacies will go through a training with this guy, Dr. Mark and Adrian. They are going to work in the capacity to coach you so that you can do a lot of these impact reports. And when you have a good impact report, we will be able to submit it to the funders and attract more capital because we are addressing the gap. Father Lord was just sharing about sources of funding, congregation level, diocese level. Sabi ko kay Father Lord, philanthropic development office level. Would you like that? Before you even started opening your office, think about Federico. You know, my heart and our hearts in SRG thinks beyond. We know we think of ourselves, but we think of the greater world out there. If your PDO has the capacity to raise as much multi-millions of funds, maybe it's about time to do a social responsibility outside your organization to help other organizations like the refugees. Because the moment you start thinking of your own only, then the Lord will say, I'm going to give you more because those more is for someone else, right? We're dreaming that the PDOs will also help one another. So I'm challenging the Jesuits. If they are getting funding, attracting funding, then I hope at this time around they're giving outside the Jesuits. Because there are places where funding is of attraction. Then you go out of that ecosystem. Is that part of your dream, PDO directors? To be funders beyond? Because if you will be funders beyond your own, then you must be raising so much funds. Pwede? Pwede. Pwede kaayo. So when you have a budget for your funding, this is the ideal that we're asking you to implement, but you navigate still. Father JP always tell me, you have to navigate so you know and understand what to do. So maybe 30% of your budget should install in the system. 40% of the budget should think of initiatives that will attract funding, and 30% of that will talk about capacitating impact report. Ang dali lang maka-raise ng funds. A lot of you are here, initiatives. But initiatives without a system is hard work. We want to do smart work. There's only a few people here for the 100 million population in our country. God has a role for you. He wants you to be resource for others. Think of your career for Him. Gone are the days that you're going to work. You're going to be here, talking like me to India, to Africa, who wants to be a missionary with Spring Rain. We're going to spread. This is the army that's built. And the army cannot proceed without a good capacity model. So our capacity building is where we are going. So the development system, just quickly, and this is the last slide. Okay, so I actually enhanced this. So as Jong was saying, it's a circular economy. It's a circular way, no? When you make your advocacies here, you establish relationship and engagement, you share your advocacy, you get your funding engaged. You accept it, you acknowledge, you build relationship, you grow your network. But once your funding is there, you utilize it, you implement, you do impact assessment, you do progress report, put that in your data, make that as the content to share, and then vice versa. And it's never ending. And as you incorporate it there, we are going to work through with that. Now, after July, when we get started with our capacity building fund, it's not as easy as you think it is, because we're both going to journey together from a funder who will support us to going there. So we have commissioned team in the consultancy to work closely with us in the coaching process. Please pick your highest, pick the choice of your people when we coach. Pray over them, but don't pray for those who are excellent. Pray for those who have the heart. And everything will fall into place. The giftedness, the heart, the connection. A system will function if you have people. That is the only requirement. But in the right people, it will fly also. But sometimes the laziness of the people will also kill you in the system. So if you're setting up the system, get the best of the best as you start. And then move everyone else on board. All right? Okay. So that's the end. And so, of course, I've shared this yesterday on the impact of it. Never forget to install the system. Never forget to install the system. Never forget to have initiatives. Without it, you cannot attract capital. And assign someone to be trained by Dr. Mark. We will pull all PDOs of the same nature and advocacy to do an impact report. Dr. Mark, is this still true? You're giving us a page in your magazine, right? Yes. There he has a magazine he's submitting to UN. He's allocating a page for Spring Rain. So your impact report gets into there. Isn't that nice? Right? So with that, our capacity building journey for me is a gift and a grace. No more than our amplification of our voice will take us further. So trust the process and let's do this. Thank you.
Okay, since we started this morning, I have been telling everybody to prepare your questions for this moment. We have now reached this the panel discussion time. So I would like to invite all those who have presented so far to please join me here on the stage. Beginning with, of course, Brother Prem. Where are you? Are you around, Brother? Yes, okay, please join me here on the stage. And then, of course, we have Mr. Simcic, Mr. Angel Jong, I believe that's your nickname, Jong Fernandez Jr., Father Lord Winner, Dr. Glenda Antonio, of course, and joining us online would be Miss Stephanie Lucero. And to facilitate this panel discussion would be Miss Anne-Marie Bering.
Good morning. Hello, Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel discussions. A piece of paper has been given to you, so if you have questions, just hand it over to our Spring Rain staff. Good morning to our panelists. Good morning. Okay, let me start with the first speaker. Sorry. Federico, Mr. Federico. How can other entities such as us or our constituents, the PDOs, say collaborate with the UN, particularly the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees? So how can entities work together with United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees?
Well, thank you for the question. Yeah, indeed, in my presentation I didn't cover that topic, hoping that this was a question that was going to be asked during the panel conversation. I would say multiple ways. The way we work with the faith-based organization, the private sector and governments is through co-creation. It's through finding common grounds and win-win solutions. We can talk marketing, we can talk PR. We are humanitarian, but we have very strong and developed private sector team. So I would say that in a nutshell, whatever are your ways or thinking of working with the UN Refugee Agency, we are ready to listen. We go from traditional grants that you mentioned, Father, through very innovative solution like impact investments, or we call them innovative financing mechanism. For instance, since we're talking about faith-based giving, a year ago we announced the creation, together with the Islamic Development Bank, of a global refugee fund, Waqaf fund, which is Zakat compliant, Sharia compliant, where we aim to mobilize $500 million that can be collected by the Islamic Development Bank and then used not only by UNHCR, we are one of the founder of the fund, to be used and implemented wherever they're needed. So we have a whole spectrum from gifting kind, grants, cause-related marketing campaigns. So there are many different ways.
Thank you for that answer. By the way, hi staff. Good morning from Bangkok. Hi.
Hi, how are
Nice
you?
to see you again online. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. For Brother Prem, how is the experience of interfaith philanthropic collaboration in India? What are the challenges and successes in this area?
In India, the interfaith cultural dimension is actually growing. There is a constant evolution of coming together, the faith-based organizations. The church is taking a great lead to bring the different religions together for the common good. And every religious conference that we have, the Conference of Religious in India, is taking a lead along with the CCBI in India, the Catholic Bishops Organization, which is very actively participating in bringing these forums together to make sure that they work for the philanthropy of the human good. And there's a lot more transformative change to be done. We are in the process of assessing the impact that so far the church has done in India, and further what more things to be done in the course of time to make sure that these collective efforts of interfaith religions can make a world of difference to the people who really need of our help and support.
Thank you, Brother Prem. I have a question here for Mr. John Fernandez. What specific challenges do philanthropic organizations face during ISO certification? To add to that, I'd like to ask also the challenges. What are the challenges have you undergone or faced in installing systems to organizations?
Very good question. Designing and developing it is easy. The challenge basically there is on the results. So ISO is audit-based. You'll be audited for results. You can easily map processes, controls, put in place some risk identification and mapping, but really it boils down to the result. Boils down to results. So when we speak of results, you have to go back to where you started. What's the KPI? What's the key metric here? Like amount of fund raised, how do you measure impact? Because there are three basic criteria there in certification. Number one is adequacy of the system, meaning is it adequately documented? Second is conformity by everybody to the system. Like Dr. Glenda is saying, you trust the process. And so in order for us to really see results, you have to conform to it. That's why there's an audit function to that. And finally is the effectiveness. So the challenge for philanthropy is to really show results at the end of the day. So it's about we agree on a scorecard and are we hitting these numbers, and it's like an engine. So is the engine running and running smoothly, that is. So it really boils down to the result, yeah.
Okay, thank you. While you're at it, Is it a requirement for all PDOs to be ISO certified eventually? So the word there is requirement, and I also like to ask Dr. Glenda to answer that. You first.
Maybe after.
Okay,
And
so
after me, you can talk. Hello. Okay, so the thrust of SRG is to make you uniquely positioned to be the biggest funders ever for the great work you can provide for humanity. And in order for you to significantly have a brand in our ecosystem, we're moving towards doing an ISO for human capital. And I was talking to Jong also, and he mentioned that an office with its standard processes can also be ISO certified, the office in itself. So that is why the capacity building journey's first step is to ensure that the processes are in place. Now, every PDO has a different structure. There's no one box structure. An educational institution has a different setup. A school, a hospital has a different setup. NGOs have different setup. But we have a common ground of framework, which is the 6-pillar model. What we will do is to design different frameworks per category and do an accreditation process as well on each of this sector. And this is just for an internal excellence from within. What we will do in the SRG Foundation is to map our brand to the donors, that without saying anything, if there's a PDO, you're taken care of. So you carry that brand along. And that's the purpose why we're bringing in Mr. Jong Fernandez, because he will put the structure for the system of how this accreditation would work. And this is also for the good of everyone, because one of the measure again is funding, but for funding to keep coming back, you have to have good report and KPI and everything else. And all this capacity building we're doing is actually leading to that area. So the standardization in itself is essential so that if there's a biggest turnover of people, you don't have to worry when someone leaves, or if father is assigned to another position and the next priest comes in to handle the office, all he has to do is to continue the system, especially for the church that is driven by problems on succession. The problem of the church is also the agenda of the bishop or the provincial or whoever, so that the people on the ground, the communities, will not be affected by the delays of leadership decisions. And maybe, Jong, you can affirm if what I'm saying can be possible, but as to the requirement, and for SRG, yes. Especially with the capacity building journey, the end goal of that 3-year support is by the time we reach 3 years, we all will be at that level where we become more competitive, or not really competitive, but amplified in the voice of the funder, so we can enter in any of the different organizations we want to partner. Jong, maybe you can.
I completely agree. So, just for context, when we were doing what we're doing at the early stages, two things could only happen. Number one is that folks in the organization will start worrying, oh no, we're putting systems and processes and structure, maybe we'll get fired because they wanted to just document everything and they can get rid of us. And the second scenario is, okay, so this is a lot of work, and really bottom line is nobody want to do it. So what we do as far as systems, international standardization is concerned, is that we do not evangelize about it. We work with organizations who are really serious and whose intention really is to achieve results, to say the least. And just to connect to what Dr. Glenda is saying, the value there is really for the funders and other stakeholders, because when they see your PDOs certified to a global standard, they know right away that you're not doing things randomly. You have structure, you have policies, you have protocols. You don't do guesswork. And so, in other words, you have a good chances of consistency in delivering results and, of course, providing impact. And that's exactly what they look for. So when they see you have the seal of good governance, so similar to what the government is doing, it increases credibility. So you don't have to really explain yourself. And through that, I think support would just flow in naturally. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, and thank you, Madam. Hi, staff. Hi, yeah. Okay, you can hear me. So I'd like to ask, yep. I'd like to ask you, how has Philanthro-Capitalism impacted the world of philanthropy on a global scale?
Well, I mean, it's amplified it on the onset, but I think what it's done is it's also shifted the receiving party, or the charity, if you will, and really made them more of a partner in the process, because they are a big part of the process. So it's gone from this top down, like, okay, I'm the funder and I'm going to give to you, and I'm going to have you do what you want to do, to really creating a collaboration and understanding everyone is needed. So Philanthro-Capitalism has done that. In addition to that, it's also kind of taken out, because it's created it more like a business. There can be like an impact investing in other endeavors like that. There can be returns. So it creates that circular economy within philanthropy as well, where there's money being made off of your efforts in some cases, not all cases, in which case you are creating more funding and you're amplifying that, you're exponentially, you're growing it. It's not just something where someone is giving and it's consumed. It's something that is being grown. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, which make it very wonderful. And it speaks to being able to help more people, the more that we are able to continue to make the funds grow bigger.
So in other words, are you saying that funders are also looking out for the sustainability of the donees?
Absolutely. Sustainability is the key. It's the credibility, sustainability, it's a long-term commitment. It's making sure that you solve the problem, and that's what they're really after. You're not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. They're looking for solutions, even if it takes some time. They want to be working towards that.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess that is really philanthropy, solving the root cause of the problem. Yep. Thank you, staff. Thank you. Okay. For Father Lord, to apply for grants to the organizations you mentioned, is it a must to be a Catholic or religious organization, or corporations are welcome?
It depends on the donor. Most of the donor organizations are very specific on whom they fund, and in their website they also publish that. If you are going to a Catholic donor organization, they normally fund organizations which are connected with Catholic religion, dioceses, congregations in their provinces or their generalates. They don't fund individuals, that's for sure. Do they fund corporations? It depends on what type of a corporation. If it is a secular corporation, they may not use a pastoral fund.
Okay.
So Catholic pastoral agencies would fund congregations and dioceses, whereas Catholic secular organizations or Catholic organizations that fund social projects, they also fund non-Catholic NGOs, because they see that only the name Catholic is not there, but the values are similar. Yes, so when another organization belongs to another religion, or a secular organization is able to bring out the gospel value, there is nothing wrong in funding them. So there are many funds going to organizations which are not Catholic, and for me it is a pain. When we have so many Catholic organizations which are in need of funds, which are doing excellent work, we are not able to articulate that clearly. So Catholic social organizations are looking for other NGOs for funding, leaving out Catholic organizations.
So it is a possibility. It can be done, right?
It can be done, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Father. Yes, Madam.
I'd like to add on the spectrum of sources of funding. Of course, when we look at the donor side, we look at where the key source or the match, no? But think of it like there's a broader spectrum. So you focus on that aspect and then don't ask things that are not aligned. Because you only get frustrated pushing something that's not even, Father, no? If, for example, if there's a right match for corporates, then go for corporate foundations. Because the problem with many of the organizations that I have witnessed is you get to bark in the wrong source and you wait, and then obviously it's really not eligible. But you still submit and, take our chance. There's no chance if there's not in the list. In the same way with AVPN, it also goes like that. There's a thematic area, there's a specific component that when they get to receive it, it's not SWAC, because that's also for the purpose of the funders to make it easy for them to pick. Because from the list of people who submitted, they will have they will filter, and then from those that really fit, that's when they really have to approve. So it's very critical that the PDO officer or the team should have that critical skill to not just send and not, because that's been a problem, Father, no? Wrongly waiting for something that's not going to happen. So we have to be more logical and directed, I suppose, yeah.
No, I agree with what Madam Glenda is saying. We don't have time. We cannot waste time in sending an application and waiting to the wrong agency. So do a lot of research and find the right agency or do consultation with people who know about it. Then you will be able to send to the right agency for the right funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Father. For Federico again, what difficulties and challenges have you encountered in dealing with faith-based organizations? And do you have some advice to the groups present here on how to effectively work with the refugees?
Nice question. Of course, there are challenges, but I like to see challenges like opportunities, because working with faith-based organization is working with organization with different ways of understanding the universe, the way of working, and to match the way we operate to the way that the other organization operates is not always immediate. So, for instance, creating a Zakat funding, it was a lot of learning, it was a lot of research, because we needed to create like a mechanism which was compliant to the rules of organizations. So we had to create a Zakat compliant fund in accordance to all the fatwas, all the Sharia rules. There is a lot of learning, a lot of speaking with the imams and the experts. So there is a long learning process. There is also capacitation of our staff and our people, because funding comes with rules and regulations. For instance, Zakat funding, they need to be 100% donated to the beneficiaries and only to a certain class of beneficiaries. So for us to adopt an organization that is serving 117 million people and say, okay, we need to identify people who are Muslim, who are fit under the 4 categories of Zakat eligible, there is an additional learning that must be done, and that applies to all the different faith-based organizations. Majority here I can see are Christians or Catholic. We do work a lot with actually Caritas, many Jesuitic organizations are implementing partners of UNHCR, so we work together, and International Red Cross. So it's a lot of mutual learning. The second part of the question was about?
What is your advice to the groups here on how to effectively work with refugees?
When I talk about the refugee topic, I usually say they're the most excluded, the most vulnerable. And actually, something that we usually say is that SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are never going to be achieved if we don't focus on refugee education, for example. That's the last mile. They are the most difficult to reach. You need to imagine scenarios where people are left with nothing in a country where they don't speak the language, without a job, not being allowed to work, not being allowed to access the national health system, not being allowed to go to school, not being allowed to have a bank account, not being allowed to have a mobile phone. I'm not making it. That's the real case. So I would say research, depending on what are the objectives of your respective organization, the countries where you operate. We have a footprint of 140 countries. In some countries, we have a better PR and a better presence than in others. We are not always a welcome or a popular partner to work with. So do your analysis. We might not be your best fit in your country for whatever reasons. What I can say that we are there, we stay, we deliver, like we did in Afghanistan in 2021 when the Taliban took over the country and many left. Our High Commissioner, he was very bold in saying we stay and we deliver, no matter the embargoes, no matter because there are millions of people in dire needs, and the people of Afghanistan don't know why they should pay the price of the conflict that others started. So when you look for impact, if there is a match with your organization and ours, not only ours, there are many UN agencies as good as ours. I would say you do your proper research, and if you see the fit, reach out.
Thank you, Federico. For Brother Prem, are there social movements or programs from the government, NGOs, or faith-based groups in India that are working toward inclusion? If so, please give examples.
There are a lot of groups in India which do advocacy in different domains. I give you a recent example that happened. We had a general elections, and one of the speaker also was speaking. We had recently general elections in India, which is one of the biggest celebration of democracy, where all the secular parties, members, especially the religious, for the first time they came out to promote and propagate a secular party or secular leaders that safeguard the values of the Constitution, which was never the time where the advocacy for policy making for the political leaders ever happened in India. The prior to 2024, April, May. We were always playing a back role. There was a time that the religious across India, right from the bishops, from the cardinals, from the lay faithful, we felt that we need to take a leadership, conscientizing people to make sure that right people should be there at the helm of affairs, so that the policy making will be in a right manner, so that the secular fabric of India is being protected. This is one recent example that I can give, and we are also part of the team who is with me in India, also very much part of this. We have gone through national consultation team, we have trained the people to make sure that they use their franchise for the right persons. This is one thing. The other thing is, in India is a place where the people agitate if there's something is not okay. There is no more fear of, okay, something can happen, because the people are well educated, well aware of their rights, well aware of their disposition, where they can demand for their rights. The governments are also very conscious before they take any decision. So the platform in India is quite open for people to raise their concerns, come together as groups to fight for their rights, so that the government hears and the right policies are made at the parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Hi, Steph. Hi again. I'd like to ask you, Steph, in your experience as a financial consultant, how important is data and the transparency of the the funds that was received and the importance of the impact report?
It's at the top of the list. I mean, it really does. It establishes yourself as, giving you credibility. It establishes you as being able to carry out something and show results. I mean, part of what philanthropy has suffered from historically has been people have given and there's no results no tangible results that are given back. It's just gone on faith, if you will, that it's gone to where it needs to go and it's making a difference because someone says it is. People aren't relying that anymore because unfortunately there have been circumstances where it just hasn't gone to the right hands or the intended hands or what have you. So having that data to show, not only be accountable for where the funds have gone to, but to show the impact that they're having and then the long-term effects of it is imperative and paramount. So it's at the top of the list. And that's why when Glenda talks about data, when we talk about putting together systems, when we talk about creating a philanthropic infrastructure, that shows our ability to perform in what we do in our business of mission, as I was saying in my presentation, it's so important because now you've set yourself apart. Now you've shown yourself to be an expert. And even if you make a mistake, because of the way that you're set up, people are going to be more apt to come back to you because they know that they have that transparency and they know, that everything is accounted for. So that would be my answer.
Okay, thank you, Steph. You want? Yes, sure.
I can't help but just a rejoinder. In most organizations we work with, whether NGO or private entity, yes, they can show data. And they all have this in data sheets, statistics, bar graphs, and all that. But when you conform to the ISO standard, what really is, it was really very pointed out. What's important there is the analysis, which we notice is sometimes lacking. So if it's 80%, what does 80% mean? What's the story behind it? And so the analysis is also a very crucial part of the numbers that you capture, in the PDO. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. While you're at it, I'll just throw the next question to you. What is your advice to the organizations who have yet to pass the standards of the SWD and PCNC? What more the standards of ISO?
So passing the ISO certification is easy, I would say. It's the maintenance which is the challenge. So in 3 months, you can actually conform to the requirements. All you need to do is to demonstrate that you have implemented systems thinking, the circular implementation of the way you do things, from planning it, implementing it, auditing it, and improving it. And so you generate evidences like your SWOT analysis, the mapping of interested parties and needs, the KPIs that you have set, the policies, objectives, targets, and the internal audits. That's easy. The sustainability is the challenge. So because when you're certified to ISO, the certification is valid for 3 years, meaning you undergo annual surveillance audit and have it recertified in the next 3 years. And so that means you have to think long term. If you're doing this now, what's the impact down the road 5 years or 10 years in the implementation or the life cycle of the PDO? So I would say with the right guidance of SRG and the capacitation of how you do it, I think it's doable. So just lastly to share, one of the common mistakes in implementing ISO is that the organization tend to document everything. It's not really the case. So you choose what are mission critical processes, so to speak, based on your SWOT analysis, and you focus there. You can have 2 or 3 KPIs and that's it. You don't have to measure everything because you could not also measure everything, right? What do they say about really focusing on things that matter, but sometimes those things that really matter also couldn't be measured. So, but whatever that is, focus on those top 2 or 3 and make sure that it's the results achieved by your system. Yeah.
So it's just saying that focus on those that are measurable. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And critical.
And critical. Measurable and critical. Please remember that. Okay. Dr. Glenda, how long should it take from PDO sign-up time to complete the 7-pillar training? And what is the direction of Spring Rain Global in standardization of capacity building? The 2 questions.
There is no box answer, but the sooner you get your team formed and the sooner you give the time for both parties, because also from our end, there's a lineup of schedules already. But we're working towards getting the team so we could address everybody needing help. But 3 to 6 months, 3 months to form your team, and you go finish the boot camp. It's the fundamentals first. It's the one day, it's a 7-day boot camp, but you implement that in the next 1 year. So you have to just get started with the people. The challenge that we're working out right now that delays the process is there's one person maybe or few doing the trainings, but they're not yet the person implementing. So it's different when you're coaching someone and the other person is the one implementing. So that's why there is a need, Jong, for fund so they can hire people. That's the purpose why we are urgently plotting the right coaching process and implementation process of capacity. So the direction of SRG is that in 1 year, many things can happen, short and long term. There are short-term goals, there's also long-term goals. But we won't sacrifice the short-term gain for the long-term goal. You get what I mean? Hindi tayo nagmamadali. We don't hurry, but we don't waste time. I know that a lot of you are saying that, Spring Rain might be so busy, but in our busy time, you also should be busy. I don't think you will wait for that time because there's a lot to prepare, I tell you. In program development, you need to map your advocacies. We won't dictate the advocacy they would need, right? You have to enable that and do synodality and listen to the community. Because in the 7-pillar, what Spring Rain actually expected from everyone who wants to do philanthropy is the program pillar is done already. But chances are, even in program pillar, there's a lot of coaching, Jong, on theory of change, logical framework. So unless that advocacy is done, it would be difficult also to get fundings done. So there is a role that you have to play also and a role that the capacity building will play. But timeline, 3 months, form the team, make sure you finish the 7-pillar and then get it implemented with initiatives and let the installation keep going. And there's an evaluation also and monitoring. But we are finalizing and standardizing the KPI. Once I get to put all these pieces, that's why I am asking for those of you to bring in your implementation program journey for capacity building, because all of that will be put in one lump KPI, and that's when I will sit down with Jong and Dr. Philip to plot the standards. Because what's good about this, Jong, is it's customized and realistic on the ground because it's different from business. The only thing in this is you have unlimited requirement. Business has a ceiling. Maybe business expands, but for philanthropy, your needs are growing and growing and growing, and it's unpredictable sometimes, especially when calamity happens. Like Father Ray was saying, he was showing me the video, and then if there's calamity, another advocacy gets affected if you are limited with your resources. And then it becomes a problem again. So you have to learn to navigate. So your advocacy should be very clear. You cannot have all also solving the problems of the world. But you have to be clear about your charisma, your direction. If you're in youth, be excellent in youth. That's all it takes. If you're with and so on and so forth. So we're excited to navigate with everybody else. And on the side, we're also brewing our organizational capacity to deliver as well from the consulting end.
Okay, thank you, Madam. I'm down to my last 3 questions. This just came in, and I'd like for Dr. Glenda, Father Lord, and Miss Stephanie to answer this. How will donor fatigue be avoided by funding donors for PDOs? I think in any organization for that matter. Or is there a thing as donor fatigue? Father Lord.
Okay. See, we talk about donor fatigue when we talk about individual fundraising. But donor organizations usually don't go for donor fatigue because they would like to work with organizations that are committed, that are able to bring good results, and they would like to continue with the next project. Like I had an example with Miserior. We did a project in 2012 and they renewed it in 15, 18 and 21. So when the project is good, they can go on funding. That doesn't mean every organization is like that. There are organizational regulations that they may not fund after 2 times, or they would take a different project from that. What's important is a good relationship with the organization. So that will keep on working, and in general there is no donor fatigue in organizational side. Because the organization has established a good relationship with you, maybe 1 or 2 years you don't have projects with them, next you present a project, they will receive. Usually it works like that in the organizational sector. But in the individual sector, it's different, and I would ask others to comment on the individual sector.
Okay, thank you, Father.
There is no such thing as donor fatigue. Donors will never get tired of giving. Why? Because they are blessed. What donors just feel tired is the manner of the way we are asking. So I think we just have to improve the way we relate with them so they get inspired even more.
Yeah, in systems thinking, if the donor is fatigued, you go to the next donor and ask the question why he is fatigued.
It's a good one.
Or maybe do not consider it fatigue if the donor didn't give. Maybe it's not just the right time for the donor. The donor may be in a situation. But the problem with us is we name, like, we describe like we know what's happening with the donor. For me, I ask if this might be the perfect time. Timing is important. So all donors are givers, and once they start giving, they always will continue to give. Yeah.
Steph, can you add to that?
I would just add to I would add to the conversation, know the motivation of the donor. You always need to know how someone is motivated to give or do anything in life for that matter. When you can speak to that root, you'll understand why or why not they're giving. If you understand that about them, you will understand the circumstance. And Glenda's right, there could just be circumstances. The economy could have changed. Their business could be going through trouble. You don't know that personal side of them. However, in addition to that, their motivation. If their motivation was they were planning to see something be done that wasn't done yet, or they're not seeing the results, or you haven't extended gratitude in the way they wanted to. It could be a number of things. I could go on and on and on. But in that implies their motivation. So understand what motivates them, and then you will understand why you're facing that circumstance.
Okay, thank you so much.
And
adapt. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. My second to the last question, how can UN help our internally displaced people like the indigenous people and fishermen displaced in the seas? Do you have current programs for that? Indigenous peoples and displaced fishermen?
Well, we would need to see the context and the country, but I would say that internally displaced people, which by definition are people that are moving within their country, are a population that we are supporting. For instance, okay. informal. Yeah. For instance, case of Ukraine, half of the country is currently under attack or invaded. There are people who decide to leave their houses and to move within Ukraine to safer places. This is an area where we support. Of course, those are people under our mandate. Or Pakistan, huge floods every monsoon season, actually. In Pakistan, there is a huge population of Afghan refugees, but natural disasters affects everybody. Those people are forced to leave their houses or their shelter to find safety to dry areas, for example. We do support them. So I cannot answer specific about fishermen and the indigenous population, but in general, when there is a factor that is causing the displacement, being climate change, being a conflict, being a war, we do support. If the government is allowing us to, if we're invited to support, because at the end we are a UN agency, so we always work in coordination with local authorities. It's for the local authority to say, we don't have the capacity to respond to this natural disaster, please, can you help? But we need that invite to work. It's not that we can just step in and do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Father.
Maybe I shall reformulate the question so that it can be more relevant for the PDOs. In a particular case, is it possible for UNHCR to work through a PDO? Because they are present in that place. Can you fund them and they do the work? Is there a provision like that?
So we do work with a lot of international NGOs and organizations, and we call them implementing partners. So when there is a match between our mandate and our scope in the specific region or state or country, and the partner is aligned with the way that we work, we do have that. I mean, that's the way we operate. If we look at the context of Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazar there are thousands of NGOs working with us. And together with other UN agencies, we coordinate the efforts, other international NGOs. I think that there is a speaker from Save the Children later. So it's one of the partners that we work together, and they are in the lead, actually, of certain activities. But our role is to put together, because you need to imagine a place like Cox's Bazar is the biggest refugee camp in the world, 1 million people. And you somehow need to coordinate everything from the waste management, the electricity, the health system, the education system. So we need to take the overview and to make sure that the aid is delivered in the best possible way. And then there are thousands or hundreds of NGOs working together in coordination with us to ensure that the best NGO in delivering water and sanitation system can do it in the best possible way. If not, it will be like hundreds of people coming in and overlapping and not working our line way. So that's the role where we come in. So I think you are talking about the cases specifically in the Philippines. We do have an office in the Philippines. For whoever has the question, we're happy to make the contact, and you can have more conversations with them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our last question is for Mr. Fernandez. How can certification and accreditation be simplified and friendly to the PDOs? You just smile. You just smile to be friendly.
Can I have 5 days? I'll simplify it. No, kidding aside. I think Miss Stephanie really nailed it. No, when she mentioned about just ask why. No, so well, to simplify ISO, just ask why. Why you're doing it? What's your intention? So, and why are you existing as a PDO? Why? Just ask why. And the second question, of course, is now that you're clear with the why, go to how. How are you going to do it? So you're going to put in structure, like I said, controls, etc. And who's going to do it? You know, so, and then measure it, and then you go back to the why again. In one of the organizations we've worked with, there's this financial institution somewhere in Hong Kong, and it's high risk, and so their how is like this. Their how is So they have tellers, frontline people. This is their how. Stand up, take 3 steps to the left, open the 3rd drawer, pull out the slip from the red envelope, and transfer it to the brown envelope. And you'd be surprised. Is that how they do it? And it's because it's a high risk. Process. It's a high risk environment. So, but the point there is that they do understand the why, and they could answer the how to do it. There's no guesswork. Nobody in the organization is asking how to do it. And so, who will do it? That's the next most simple thing to do. And then finally, ask yourselves if you're successful with the why, the how, the who, the when, and the where. We're all familiar with the 5W and 1H. And for you to remember 5W and 1H, it stands for others, 5 wives and 1 husband. So, but kidding aside, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, how are you going to do it, where, when, who, and you'll never go wrong. No? So all the rest basically is just supporting it with documentation, and that's the least important part. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. And thank you so much. You want to answer, Father? Okay. Thank you so much. That ends our panel. But before we go, I'd like to ask you for your key takeaway for your sharing this morning, starting with Ms. Stephanie. Your key takeaway, please.
My key takeaway this morning is just I'm in awe of being among all of these people on the panel and how everyone is contributing to the greater philanthropic effort and making sure that we are armed with so much yummy information and systems, processes, and support. And I hope you all feel the same way, because there's a lot of support, there's a lot of love in this panel and in this room that's being thrown at you to make sure and to help you in your journey and with your success.
Thank you, Steph, and nice to see you again. Father Lord?
I would like to say that working with philanthropy is a bit different from working in projects. The people in the philanthropic development offices should understand this. When you raise funds from individuals and corporates, it's very different from working with the donor agency through projects, grants to receive from them. The process looks very similar. It is similar, but it is distinct and different. So being a PDO doesn't necessarily give you the projects. You need to further train yourself and restructure your PDO in order to get grants and funds. That way, if you do, it will be more successful in getting the grants side.
Thank you, Father. Federico?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning of my intervention, and I will say it again. I love to see the atmosphere of the room, the willingness, the interest on the topic. That's the way that I take back with me. So much growing interest on faith-based organizations, on philanthropy, and the interest of standardizing, formalizing, and growing the way of doing it through organizations like, for example, Spring Rain Global. That for me is like, wow, great. That's great to hear and great to see. And the last point is somehow confirming this alignment between what you do and what we do in so many possible ways. And also thank you for the other speakers, very interesting, all your speeches, and now I know much more about the Philippines and the work done in India, and so thank you also for that.
Thank you. Brother Prem?
My takeaway from the whole interactions, all of us who are here has got immense potentials to contribute. I think let us put our hands together along with a wonderful ecosystem of SRG to create a lasting impact across the world and to create a just society and just world, so that we make a place for the humans to live in a better place, in a better conditions. And we love to see the team in India here. The Indian flag should come along with other flags, next the next SRG conference.
Hopefully.
So
Hopefully.
thank you.
Mr. Fernandez?
Yeah, Dr. Glenda, thank you for having me here. And, it got me thinking. I once dreamed of becoming a priest. And I could only last 3 years in the seminary. And, talking about circular, coming full circle, now I'm back here. I so admire every one of you. You're doing God's work. And like Dr. Glenda mentioned, there's no accident. So maybe it's also God's way of asking me again, John, we need you to help us with God's work. So, it's truly an honor. It's truly a pleasure. And we're talking about really important impact here, changing the world, solving the most serious problem. And if we're looking at those results, reliable results can only come from reliable systems. And so I would encourage you all to start building your systems one process at a time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Reliable results, reliable system. Dr. Glenda?
I just want to assure you all that having to come up with a conference is not just inviting these guys because they are speakers. In Spring Rain, speakers become our collaborators. So we will be diving in with Father Lord to make sure the grant proposals are there. We would learn from Federico, because refugees is also in analogy to what's happening, for example, in the Philippines with informal settlers, with the indigenous peoples. What he has mentioned is a model that you can follow, that if it's done like a refugee setup, it's no difference when somebody is displaced from calamity as well. How do you ignite everybody else to work together? Rotary has to also collaborate. We have the governors here, and I'm sure they have a good leadership to put the pieces together as well. But to everyone in this room, there is nothing happening by accident. Take advantage of time, take advantage to collaborate, and don't just end your momentum here. When you go back home, meet with your team, and let's get this going. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. A big round of applause, please, for them. It is now time to present the plaque of appreciation to our speakers.
Okay, we'll be handing over the tokens following the order of presentation this morning. Okay, we'll begin with our first presenter this morning, Brother Prem. First, I would like to invite on stage Father Orvin and Father Alwen to assist me in handing over the token. Let me just read the citation. This plaque of appreciation is presented to Brother Prem as a keynote speaker during the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Equity and Inclusion in the Philanthropy, presented this 25th or 24th of July 2024 at Amari Bangkok Hotel, Bangkok, signed by, of course, this is engineer. It's getting smaller and smaller. Mark Antonio, and then we have Father Victor Gonzaga and Dr. Glenda Antonio. So this is for Brother Prem. Okay, thank you, Brother Prem. Next on the list, we have this plaque of appreciation is presented to Father Lord Winner as a keynote speaker during the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic, The Landscape of Funding in Asia and Beyond, presented on this 25th day of July 2024 at the Amery Bangkok Hotel, Bangkok, Thailand, signed by Engineer Anthony Antonio, Father Victor Gonzaga, and Dr. Glenda Antonio. Okay, next on the list, we have this plaque of appreciation is presented to Mr. Federico Simcic on the as a keynote speaker during the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Landscape on Faith-Based Philanthropy and Capacity Building, UNHCR Experience, presented this 25th of July 2024 at the Amery Bangkok Hotel, signed by Engineer Mark Anthony Antonio, Father Victor Gonzaga, and there's no sign, there should be Glenda, Dr. Glenda Antonia. Next, this plaque of appreciation is presented to Mr. Angel Fernandez Jr. as a keynote speaker during the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Enhancing Capacities Towards Excellence in Systems Thinking, presented this 25th day of July 2024 at Amery Bangkok Hotel, signed Mark Anthony Antonio, Father Victor Gonzaga, and Dr. Glenda Antonia. Then we have this plaque of appreciation is presented to Dr. Glenda M. Antonio as a keynote speaker during the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Capacity Building using the SRG 7-pillar capacitation model, presented this 25th day of July 2024 at Amery Bangkok Hotel, signed by Engineer Mark Anthony Antonio and Father Victor Gonzaga. Last but not the least, of course, we would like to give the certificate of appreciation virtually for now to Ms. Stephanie Lucero. So the certificate of appreciation reads, this certificate is proudly presented to Ms. Stephanie Lucero as a keynote speaker on the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Sustainable Philanthropy, Philanthro-Capitalism Strategies among Funders, presented this 25th day of July 2024.